In this video, we'll show you what happened in Book 2 of A Game of Thrones compared to Season 2 of the HBO adaptation and what was left out because it was too dark. We'll use vertical footage on the right to remind you of what happened in the TV show, plus the Game of Thrones comic book so you can see for yourself why the books were actually better. We'll also put forward the idea that Cersei was completely ruined because they didn't follow the books. So even if you are a show watcher only who has never read the books, we'll give you the real Cersei Lannister as best we can. In our last two videos, we summarized the first 12 comic books of A Clash of Kings, and in this video, we'll cover the next 6. We'll also summarize each chapter of A Clash of Kings, which is Book 2 in the series, and was pretty much just used for Season 2. So stay watching. But first, thank you to Surfshark VPN for sponsoring this video. We've got something exciting to share. Meet Surfshark VPN. Imagine lightning-fast speeds that make buffering a thing of the past. Picture unlimited devices protected by a strict no-logs policy. It works seamlessly on your phone, tablet, and even your laptop or desktop. Surfshark isn't just a VPN, it's your digital bodyguard. Why should you care? Well, it's all about security. Browse anonymously, protect your data, say goodbye to geo-restrictions, whether you're streaming, working, or just chilling. Surfshark has over 3,200 servers in 100 countries, and it has your back. Surfshark's VPN makes sure that your city, country, and download history aren't linked to your identity. Also, it makes Clean Web feature block ads, trackers, malware, and phishing attempts, allowing you to surf the web safely. Surfshark does not monitor, track, or store what you do online. This means no connection or activity logs. You will get real-time alerts, get real-time protection, and get truly organic results. So what are you waiting for? Ready to dive in? Click the link below to get an exclusive discount. Surfshark offers a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk to try it out. To get an extra 3 months free with Surfshark VPN, use the code VIDEOBOOKS. You can scan the QR code on screen or use the link in the description. Surf freely, my friends. Remember, it's not just about privacy, it's about freedom. Thanks for watching. Once again, thank you to Surfshark VPN for sponsoring this video. Chapter 25. Tyrion passes Sir Mirren Trant as he enters Cersei's chambers, where he finds the recently knighted Sir Lancel Lannister singing to his sister. He compliments both, which unnerves Lancel. Tyrion asks Cersei to dismiss Lancel as there is an important matter for them to discuss. She immediately thinks it is about the begging brothers that were incarcerated after claiming the gods are punishing everyone for Jaime killing the rightful king. Cersei complains that Sir Jacelyn Bywater did nothing, so she commanded Valar to attend to the matter. Tyrion is irritated that Valar dragged half a dozen Scabrous prophets to the dungeon without consulting him, but will not fight over it. After he asks if the bed she sits on is the one where Robert died, which she confirms, saying it gives her sweet dreams, he tells her that Stannis Baratheon has sailed from Dragonstone. Cersei, furious and panicking, and enraged that Tyrion is so glib. She starts shaking him, and this is the moment when Tyrion reveals Stannis has not sailed against them, but to Storm's End to lay siege, and Renly Baratheon is riding to meet him. Tyrion, however, thinks it will end in battle rather than agreement, since the brothers are too different, yet alike. Cersei disagrees and thinks maybe Robert was the smartest of the brothers after all. They laugh heartily, and Cersei is so happy she even hugs him and spins him around. He fills 2 cups with wine, adding some powder to hers. As they toast, Tyrion wonders if this is the Cersei Jaime sees, and is almost sorry for poisoning her. The next morning, Cersei is ill, so Tyrion holds audience alone. In the hall, they are both Lannister guardsmen and Goldcloaks standing across from each other, with Bronn and Sir Preston Greenfield flanking the throne. In attendance are lovely Sansa Stark, the coughing Lord Giles Roseby, his cousin Tyrick Lannister, who recently married young Hermesand Hayford. He is teased with the nickname Wet Nurse. Sir Cleos Frey approaches, and Grand Maester Pycelle announces that they cannot accept Robb's terms. Tyrion then gives Sir Cleos their own terms. Robb Stark must lay down his sword, swear fealty, and return to Winterfell. He must free my brother unharmed, and place his host under Jaime's command, to march against the rebels Renly and Stannis Baratheon. Each of the Stark's bannermen must send us a son as hostage. A daughter will suffice where there is no son. They shall be treated gently and given high places here at court, so long as their fathers commit no new treasons. When Sir Cleo states that Robb will not agree to these terms, Tyrion continues with, "Tell him that we have raised another great host at Castle Rock, that sooner will march on him from the west, while my lord father advances from the east. Tell him he stands alone, without hope of allies. Stannis and Renly Baratheon war against each other, and the Prince of Dorne has consented to wed his son Trystane to the Princess Marcilla. As to this of my cousins, we offer Harren Karstark and Sir Willis Manderly for Willem Lannister, and Lord Serwyn and Sir Donal Locky for your brother Tion. Tell Stark that 2 Lannisters are worth 4 Northmen in any season. His father's bones he shall have, as a gesture of Joffrey's good faith." This raises murmurs of delight and laughter from the audience. Sir Cleos asks about the sword Ice and Robb's sisters. Tyrion states that he will have the sword when he makes peace, and the sisters when Jaime is released. Tyrion then tells Valar that Sir Cleos is to also have a Lannister escort since he is a cousin, and that Valar is to take all of his guardsmen. This raises concern from Pycelle. Valar stands stone still. Tyrion states that the Gold Cloaks and Kingsguard are adequate to protect the king and queen. Varys smiles knowingly. Littlefinger feigns boredom, and Pycelle is looking confused. Tyrion attempts to close the meeting, but Sir Alliser Thorne speaks up, complaining about being ignored. Tyrion feigns ignorance of him being in the city, blaming Bronn for making his friend that he walked the wall with wait. Sir Alliser wants to speak to the king, but is told he is playing with his new crossbow, which Tyrion has just given him. So Sir Alliser will have to talk with the king's servants. Sir Alliser relates how they found the corpses of 2 long-dead rangers and brought them back to the wall. They rose that night and killed Sir Jaemery Riker and attempted to murder Sir Jorah Mormont. Tyrion gets assurances that the Lord Commander survived and they killed these 2 dead men. Sir Alliser tells them that they were dead the first time, pale and cold, with black hands and feet. As proof, he had a hand, but it rotted away while he waited. Tyrion thinks of the dread he felt when he was on the wall with Jon Snow. He orders Littlefinger to send Sir Alliser back with 100 spades to bury the dead and prevent them from walking, and also tells Sir Jacelyn that Sir Alliser will have the pick of the dungeons to use the spades. Tyrion is informed that the dungeons are near empty since Yoren has already taken all of the likely men. He tells Sir Jacelyn to arrest some more, or to spread the word that there is food at the wall. Sir Alliser is not easily dismissed, trying to warn Tyrion of the danger. Sir Preston intervenes, and Sir Alliser knows better than to challenge a Kingsguard. Then Bronn marches Sir Alliser from the hall. Varys compliments Tyrion on how well he handled the situation. Littlefinger asks if he meant to send away all his guards, to which Tyrion responds only his sister's guards. Tyrion notes that Littlefinger is not happy with him, and Littlefinger replies that he loves him as much as ever, but that Marcella Baratheon cannot wed Robert Arryn if she weds Trystane Martell, and to leave him out of the next deception. Glancing at the knife at Littlefinger's hip, Tyrion apologizes, stating the realm needs him. Tyrion asks Varys to walk with him. Varys tells him that Cersei will never let him send away her guard, and Tyrion replies that Varys is going to help him accomplish this by saying it is part of the plan to free Jaime. Varys is to put the thief, the poisoner, the murmur, and the murderer in crimson cloaks to join the rest of the guard escorting Sir Cleos. 4 among 400 Lannister men cannot be watched closely. She will not like it and be uneasy, but Tyrion likes her uneasy. Sir Cleos leaves that afternoon, escorted by 100 Lannister guardsmen. That same afternoon, Tyrion finds Timett dicing in the barracks and tells him to meet him in his solar at midnight. He feasts with the Vale Mountain clans that night, shunning wine for once. During the feast, he asks Shagga what moon it is and is told black, which they call the traitor's moon. He tells Shagga to not get too drunk and to keep his axe sharp. Shagga uses his axe to destroy the door to Pycelle's chambers. Tyrion has Timett pull the naked serving girl out of the bed and marches her into the hall. Tyrion pulls the blanket off the maester, who asks why this is being done to a loyal servant. Tyrion tells him that he sent one of his letter to Doran Martell and the other to Cersei. Pycelle tries to blame Varys, but Tyrion informs him that he was the only one he entrusted the information with. Pycelle tries to claim that something happened to the letter on the way, and that he knows things about Varys that would chill Tyrion's blood. Tyrion replies that his lady prefers his blood hot. Then Pycelle tries to accuse Littlefinger, to which Tyrion responds that he already knows about him. Tyrion instructs Shagga to cut off Pycelle's manhood and feed it to the goats. When Shagga states there are no goats, Tyrion tells him to make do. Shagga first takes most of Pycelle's beard with his axe as Pycelle sprays everything with urine. Pycelle tells Tyrion that he did everything for House Lannister and to ask Tywin. He says he was even responsible for convincing Aerys II Targaryen to open the gates. Tyrion, shocked, states, so the sack of King's Landing was your work as well. He then asks how many he has betrayed. Aerys, Eddard Stark, himself, King Robert, Jon Arryn, Prince Rhaegar? Pycelle pleads that Robert was a wretched king, that Renly was plotting to bring Mace Tyrell's daughter to court and have Cersei supplemented as queen. Tyrion asks what Lord Arryn had been plotting, and Pycelle explains that Jon Arryn knew of Cersei's incest. Pycelle also knew that Lord Jon planned to send his wife back to the Eyrie, his son to foster on Dragonstone, and that he meant to act on his knowledge. Thanks to Shagga's axe making closer and closer shaves of Pycelle's neck, Tyrion finally gets him to confess that he had a hand in the death of Jon Arryn by assuring he wouldn't receive effective treatment because he knew about the father of Cersei's children. He tells them he knew that Cersei wanted Jon dead, but could not say it since Varys was always listening. He sent Coleman away because he was purging Jon. Then Pycelle attempts to blame Hugh for the poisoning, telling Tyrion that Varys can tell him. Disgusted, Tyrion orders Pycelle thrown into one of the black cells. When Pycelle is gone, Tyrion searches the quarters and collects a few small jars, thinking how he wished Pycelle was the one he could have trusted. Varys and Littlefinger are no more loyal, just more subtle and thus more dangerous. Tyrion suspects his father's method might be best. Send for Sir Ilyn Payne, have all three of the heads mounted above the gates and be done with it. What Tyrion did here was stupid and petty. He should have done what he did with Lancel and keep Pycelle in place and had him report back on Cersei's movements. Because all this ensures is that when the time comes to betray Tyrion, Pycelle will. Which he does by testifying at Tyrion's trial out of revenge. Lastly, what Pycelle said about serving House Lannister rings kind of true when Jaime observes him at Tywin's funeral. Of all the mourners, Grand Maester Pycelle had seemed the most distraught. I have served 6 kings, he told Jaime after the second service, while sniffing doubtfully about the corpse. But here, before us, lies the greatest man I ever knew. Lord Tywin wore no crown, yet he was all a king should be. Which is kind of sad that Pycelle actually was loyal to House Lannister. We see the best evidence for this in A Feast for Crows when Pycelle summons Kevan Lannister to be regent after Cersei's arrest. Otherwise, the Tyrells would have completely seized power in King's Landing. And yet, this reward was that Tyrion and Cersei would treat him horribly and completely ignore his advice. Chapter 26. Fear has become a part of Arya's daily life as she walks the hard, rutted roads among a group of prisoners of Gregor Clegane and his men. A kind of fear she had never known until she was held captive in that storehouse at the shore of the God's Eye. They spent 8 days in the village and are now leaving on Clegane's command, and every day she has seen someone die. The Mountain came into the storehouse each morning after breakfast to pick one of them to be interrogated. The village folk did not dare to look at him, maybe hoping they would escape his attention, but there was no way to hide from him, no way to be safe. He just chose whomever he liked. There was a girl he picked on the 4th day who had just slept with a soldier 3 nights running, yet the soldier said nothing. There was an old man he picked on the 5th day who had mended their clothing and declared so often that his son served in the city watch and did all for Joffrey that the other prisoners had actually started calling him All for Joffrey. There was a young mother with a pock-scarred face who told Clegane everything she knew on the exception that they would spare her daughter for it, only to see her daughter be picked the next morning to make certain the mother held nothing back. The interrogations always went down the same way. They were done in front of the whole group so that everyone knew what happened to rebels and traitors. They called the ordinary-looking man who did the questioning the Tickler. He was assisted by Chiswick, the old stoop-shouldered man who smashed Arya's head when they caught her, or by someone else, with Clegane just watching and listening until the prisoners died, which they invariably did. The questions were always about valuables or food hidden in the village, about the whereabouts of Beric Dondarrion and the size of his band, and about who of the villagers had assisted them. They found a few valuables from the interrogations, but only got wildly inconsistent information about Dondarrion and his men. The longest someone survived the tickler's treatment was until evenfall. The bodies were hung by the fires as food for the wolves. The time in the storehouse has taught Arya that she is no water dancer. Syrio Forel would have never let them knock him down, take his sword, just watch as Lomi Greenhands was killed, or sit meekly by in that storehouse doing nothing while others died. She hates the villagers for being sheep, almost as much as she hates herself for being a lamb, not a direwolf, as the sigil of her house suggests. By now, the Lannisters have taken everything from her: father, friends, home, hope, courage, needle. They broke her wooden sword in front of her. They have even taken away her secret of being a girl. She was still able to pee in privacy at the storehouse, yet on the open road that is not possible, even though she tried to hold it. Hot Pie gaped at her when she skinned her breeches at a brush in front of all, but nobody else even looked. Clegane's men didn't care at all. Their captors have forbidden them to talk, and they punish those who disregard the order. As Arya has learned herself by getting her lip broken, they smashed with a spiked mace the face of a boy who wouldn't stop calling for his father. Then Raff the Sweetling killed the boy's mother as well when she started screaming. Arya sees no purpose any longer in being brave, so she watches people die and does nothing. One woman who was questioned tried to be brave, but she died screaming just as the rest did. There are no brave ones left on this march, only women and children and very old or very young men. The other men were chained to the gibbet and left as food for wolves and crows. They only spared Gendry because he admitted that he had forged his helmet himself, as blacksmiths are too valuable to be killed. The Mountain tells them that they will be taken to Harrenhal to serve Lord Tywin Lannister, a last chance given to the rebels and traitors, which they should take, obey, serve, and live. Arya hears people arguing about this when they go to sleep that night. An old woman laments that what is being done to them isn't just, as they didn't commit any treason. Dondarrion's men just came and has taken everything from them, as Clegane's did. Unlike the Mountain's men, Dondarrion's did the village folk no harm though, another woman points out. And Thoros of Myr even paid for what they took. Only with signed papers, the old woman replies, and those don't lay eggs as the chicken they took from her used to. Having made sure that no guard is looking, she spits 3 times for all Lannisters and Starks and Tullys. An old man says that the old king would have never stood for this sin and shame. Arya, forgetting herself, asks whether he is talking about King Robert, but the man meant King Aerys. Then a guard interferes. The old man loses his 2 remaining teeth, and everyone falls silent. Besides the prisoners, Clegane's band is also taking pigs, chickens, a cow, and 9 wagons of saltfish to Harrenhal. The Mountain and his men are riding horses, but the captives have to walk and are killed if they cannot keep up or try to flee. The guards pick women at night and go into the bushes with them, receiving almost no resistance. There was one girl, prettier than the rest, who had to go with 4 or 5 different men each night, until she finally hit one with a stone one day. Clegane himself beheaded her with his massive 2-handed greatsword and made everyone watch. He commanded that the body was to be left for the wolves. Arya has a side look at Needle, worn at the hip by a black-bearded, balding man called Polliver, thinking how good it is that they took her sword from her, as she would have used it to stab Clegane that moment. And that would likely have ended with her being left as food for the wolves as well. Polliver is hardly the worst of the lot, Arya thinks. By now she knows every one of Clegane's men, when they were only nameless strangers the night she was caught. It's important to keep in mind who of them is lazy or brutal, smart or stupid. The one they call Shitmouth has the foulest tongue she has ever heard, yet he will give you an extra piece of bread if you ask, while jolly old Chiswick or soft-spoken Rafford will only hit you. Arya observes them and listens to their talk, polishing her hates the way Gendry used to polish his helmet. She hates Dunsen for wearing Gendry's helmet, Polliver for taking Needle, and Chiswick for thinking he's funny. She hates even more the people she knows are responsible for the death of ones close to her. Raff the Sweetling for the death of Lomi, Armory Lorch for the death of Yoren, Mirren Tread for the death of Syrio, the Hound for the death of Micah, Ilan Payne and Joffrey and Cersei for the death of her father, Fat Tom, Desmond, and the rest, even for the death of Lady Sansa's direwolf. The tickler is almost too scary to hate though. There are times Arya almost forgets that he is coming along with the band, as he is completely inconspicuous when he isn't torturing people. Just another soldier, and actually quieter than most of them. Arya has started whispering to herself the names of the people she hates. She does it every night now. In Winterfell, she used to pray with her father at the Godswood, and with her mother in the Sept. But on the road to Harrenhal, whispering the names has become the only prayer left to her. Finally, the trees give way to a more open landscape of hills, streams, and fields, and the occasional burnt holdfast. After another day's march, they get the first glimpse of the towers of Harrenhal rising hard against the blues of the lake. Prisoners keep telling each other that things will get better at Harrenhal, but Arya is not sure about this, as she remembers Old Nan's story about this castle built on fear, and with mortar, black Harren mixed with human blood, but where he was roasted with all his sons by the dragons of Aegon the Conqueror nonetheless. The castle is only a few more miles off, Arya thinks. Yet they walk almost 2 more days before they reach Lord Tywin's army, encamped west of the castle in the scorched remains of a town, the stench from the overflowing latrines greeting them as they approach, telling Arya that the army has been here for some time. The sheer size of Harrenhal makes it deceptive to the eyes from afar, yet the gatehouse of the castle alone is as large as the great keep of Winterfell. Arya can only see the tops of 5 immense towers from outside, seeing their grotesque and misshapen form looking like an old man's gnarled knuckly fingers groping for the sky. She now believes every word Old Nan told about the stones melted and flowed like candle wax, turning into a searing red as they sought out Harren where he hid. Hot Pie does not want to enter the castle, declaring that there are ghosts within. Criswick gives him the choice of joining the ghosts or becoming one, so he walks in with the rest. In the echoing bathhouse, they have to strip and scrub themselves in tubs filled with scalding hot water, the process supervised by 2 fierce old women who talk about them like they are newly acquired donkeys. When they examine Arya, Goodwife Amabel is dismayed about her feet, while Goodwife Harrier has a closer look at the calluses she receives while training with Needle. Harrier believes Arya is a farmer's daughter and got them from churning butter. She tells Arya that she can earn a higher station in life if she works hard, but will be beaten if she does not. Asked for it, she does not dare to give away her true name, nor does she want to use Ari. Thus she says Lomi called her Weasel, the name of the first girl that comes to her mind. Amabel thinks the name is appropriate. She declares that Arya will lose her hair, as it is filled with lice, and will be assigned to the kitchen. Arya says she'd rather tend the horses, thinking that she could steal one and escape. Arya slaps her so hard that her lip breaks again and commands her to shut up, as nobody is interested in her views. Arya thinks that Arya wouldn't dare slap her if she had Needle. Amabel explains that Lord Tywin has grooms and squires to look after the horses, and that the kitchen would have a nice place for Arya, as it is snug and clean, and one can always find a warm place to sleep there. However, Arya doesn't seem to be smart, so they should give her over to Whis, Amabel suggests. They send her off with a rough spun garb and ill-fitting shoes. Whis turns out to be the under-steward for the Wailing Tower, a squat man with a carbuncle on the nose and angry red boils at one corner of his lips. He tells the 6 assigned to him that the Lannisters are generous to those who serve them well, a fate none of them deserve. If they do well, they might rise one day as high as he did. However, if they intend to presume on Lord Tywin's kindness, they'll have to deal with Whis. They are told they are not to look the highborn in the eye, are only allowed to speak when spoken to, and should not get in Lord Tywin's way. Whis says he can smell defiance, pride, and disobedience, and if he does, they'll have to answer for it. All he wants to sniff of them is fear. So obviously the show had Arya be Tywin Lannister's cupbearer, which is a massive improvement on Arya's book plotline. However, it makes absolutely no sense that Tywin would allow some random little girl to be his cupbearer, which is a very reputable position like we saw with Rhaenyra in House of the Dragon, and not just given to anyone. We are also introduced to the Mountain's Men, many of whom are put on Arya's list of people to kill. Chapter 28. Meera, armed with a 3-pronged frog spear and a net, is facing Summer in the Godswood. Summer charges past the spear, but is entangled in the net as he slams into her. Bran tells her that she loses, but Jojen, whom Old Nan calls Little Grandfather because he is so somber, points out that Summer is entangled in the net. After disentangling the wolf and Bran calling to him, she asks if Summer ever grows angry. Bran tells her not with him, and he has never drawn blood. Meera is still worried, but Bran assures her that he would not have drawn her blood. He knows and likes her. Bran thinks about how Meera is so like his sister, Arya, and tells them that he wishes they were their wards instead of Big Walder and Little Walder. They have stayed after all the others have gone and have become his constant companions. Bran tells Meera he has never heard of anyone fighting with a net and asks if their master-at-arms taught her. She tells him her father taught her, and they have no knights or ravens at the Grey Water Watch. The island moves, so neither ravens nor enemies can find it. Bran asks if he would be welcome at Grey Water Watch after the hostilities end. They assure him that their Lord Father would welcome him any time, and that leaving Winterfell sooner rather than later would be good for him. It is revealed that the Bastard of Bolton has forcibly taken Lady Hornwood as his wife after the Harvest Feast, that Lord Manderley took her castle to protect it, and Sir Roderick has gone east to settle the uprising and see that justice is done. Bran could ask Sir Roderick about visiting the Reeds when he returns. Meera reveals that Jojen has the green sight. He has dreams of things that have not happened, but sometimes do. Jojen corrects this by saying they always do. Bran asks to hear about the dreams, and is told that Jojen will, but only if Bran tells them about his own dreams. Bran denies he has dreams, saying that Maester Luwin gives him sleeping draughts, which he admits help only sometimes. Meera tells him that everyone in the castle hears him scream when he sleeps. Bran does not tell, but is interested in what dreams Jojen has had. Jojen thinks that Bran is the winged wolf bound to earth by chains. He also states that a crow is trying to peck through the chains, but his beak can only chip them. When asked if the crow has 3 eyes, Jojen nods. The crow first came to Jojen when he almost died of grey water fever, and to Bran after he fell. It told him he had to fly, but when Bran woke, he was broken and couldn't fly. After hearing this, Jojen is sure that Bran is the winged wolf, and they tell Bran that the 3-eyed crow is not in Grey Water Watch, but north, beyond the wall. When their father heard Jojen's dreams, he sent them to Winterfell. When Bran asks how he will break the chains, he is told to open his eye, not the 2 that are opened, but the 3rd one. When he opens his 3rd eye, he will be able to see south to the Summer Sea and north beyond the wall. Bran decides that he is tired of talking of crows and wants to talk about something else, and then asks about lizard lions. However, Jojen keeps asking Bran about his dream, whether he has dreamed he was Summer, and then reveals that when he touched Summer that night of the Harvest Feast, he felt Bran in Summer, and that he felt Bran fall. He then asks if falling scares Bran. Bran thinks of the Golden Man, and that he scares him. He has not been able to tell Sir Roderick or Maester Luwin, so cannot tell the Reeds either. Jojen continues by asking if he falls every night, and there is a low rumbling growl from Summer. Meera puts herself between Summer and her brother and asks Bran to keep the wolf back. Bran claims that Jojen is making Summer angry, but Meera responds that it is him that Jojen is making angry, his fear. She tells Bran that he and Summer are part of each other. Shaggy Dog arrives. The dire wolf lunges and Meera tells Bran to call them off, but he does not know how, and Jojen tells Bran that Summer is reacting to his anger. Meera tells her brother to climb the tree. Jojen responds that it is not his day to die, but complies, and Meera follows. Bran has been unable to call off the wolves, but remembers he is not alone and calls to Hodor. When Hodor appears, Bran tells him to chase the wolves away, which he gleefully does. When Jojen returns to the ground, he never takes his eyes off Summer as he tells Bran that they will talk again. Bran only thinks that it was the wolves, not him, and tells Hodor to bring him to Maester Luwin. When he is with Maester Luwin, he tells him that Meera said her brother has the green sight. Luwin explains that their wise men call such people greenseers. He then tells Bran that nobody truly knows what it is, but that the first men thought that the greenseers could see through the eyes of the weirwood, which is why the men cut down the trees, and that they have control over animals and fish. When asked, Bran tells the Maester that Jojen only claims to have dreams that sometimes come true. The Maester tells Bran that everyone has dreams that come true, like when he and Rickon dreamed their father was in the crypts before they knew he was dead. He then asks Bran whether he remembers the meaning of the metals of a Maester's chain: black iron for Raveny, silver, healing, gold, sums. Luwin pulls his chain around his neck to reveal a link made of Valyrian steel, and tells Bran that it signifies the study of the higher mysteries, magic. This is a study of small use that few maesters trouble with. He goes on to say that magic might have once been a mighty force, but no longer. Valyria was its last ember, and dragons the children, and giants are no more. Jojen does not have the green sight, since no living man has that power. Bran tells Meera what the Maester said when she comes to him at dusk, and that Summer should not have tried to hurt Jojen. But Jojen should not have made the comments about his dreams. The crow lied, and so did Jojen, that Bran could fly. Meera suggests that the Maester may be wrong, but Bran replies that he is not, and that his father depended on him. She leaves him with another of Jojen's dreams, that one day soon, Maester Luwin will serve him a king's cut of the roast at a great feast, but the portion he gives to the Walders will be grey and dead, yet they will like their meal better than he. That night, Bran is almost afraid to sit at supper, but everyone is served the same, and there is nothing wrong with the food served the Walders. Bran is relieved. Nothing bad is coming to Winterfell, but he is disappointed also. So long as there is magic, anything can happen. He will never walk, fly, or be a knight. So we first hear of Ramsay Snow in this chapter, and his actions demonstrate the inherent weakness of House Stark marching their army south, leaving the North vulnerable to both internal squabbling, like in the case over Lady Hornswood Land, and external invasion, as we see with the Ironborn. Also, in this chapter, we get our first mention of the Winged Wolf, which is obviously meant to be Bran, and the chains holding him down are meant to be Winterfell and Maester Luwin's rational skepticism towards all things magic. So whoever is sending Bran dreams needs to break these chains, and they do this by sending Theon dreams that give him the idea to seize Winterfell for himself, and ultimately force Bran to escape north. So we definitely believe the person who's sending these dreams is the Three-Eyed Crow, which is not Bloodraven, but most likely a time-traveling Bran. In chapter 29, Tyrion is informed by a sleepy Podrick Payne that Lancel Lannister has arrived. Tyrion is not bothered by the late hour, since he usually works well into the morning reading Varys' Whisperer's reports or going over Littlefinger's accounts. He figures, however, that Cersei was expecting Lancel's late arrival would catch him less alert. Tyrion takes his time and roughens his hair to make it look like he has been woken from his sleep. Tyrion warmly greets Lancel, who has been pacing. Lancel tells him that Cersei commands that Pycelle be released, handing Tyrion her warrant. Tyrion tells Lancel he hopes she is not overtaxing herself. He would not want to see a relapse. After being assured that she is recovered, Tyrion states it is music to his ears, thinking he should have given her a larger dose. Tyrion offers Lancel mulled wine to help him sleep, and he rejects the offer, having not come to drink. Tyrion states that wine has its dangers, and that he would have thought if Cersei was so concerned about Pycelle, she would have come herself. Lancel tells Tyrion just to release the prisoner with a sneer, that the Queen is Joffrey's regent. Tyrion replies that he is Joffrey's hand. Lancel replies, the hand serves, the regent rules until the king is of age. And Tyrion says maybe he should write it down so he can remember, and tells Podrick to leave. After Pod leaves, Lancel states that Sir Jacelyn Bywater defied a command in the king's name, and that Cersei demands he be removed and charged with treason. Tyrion thinks that it means that Cersei has already ordered Pycelle's release and Bywater rebuffed her. When Lancel threatens Tyrion, Tyrion responds that he will hear no warning from a boy. Lancel touches his sword and warns Tyrion to watch his words. Tyrion in turn warns him that at a cry from him, Shagga will break in and kill Lancel with an axe and not a wineskin. Lancel, incensed, tells Tyrion that he is a knight. Tyrion asks if Cersei had him knighted before or after she took him to bed. Lancel says nothing, and Tyrion can tell from his eyes that Varys was right. When Tyrion comments, Lancel demands Tyrion withdraw his filthy accusations. Before he can finish, Tyrion mentions the result if Joffrey discovered he murdered his father to bed his mother. Lancel's courage deserts him as he insists to Tyrion that Tywin Lannister commanded Lancel to do everything that Cersei told him when he was assigned squire to King Robert I Baratheon. Tyrion asks if Tywin told him to fuck Cersei also, noting that Lancel looks somewhat like Jaime, but a poor copy. Lancel starts to say he only did what he was bid, to which Tyrion adds that he must have hated every instant of a high place in court, knighthood, and Cersei opening her legs, and then threatens to go to the king. Lancel begs for mercy as Tyrion continues his threats to go to the king, whom he is duty-bound to inform. When Lancel states he will end it, Tyrion tells him no, that he will stay close to Cersei, be a spy for him, and tell no one. Lancel agrees, and Tyrion orders him to drink to their understanding. Tyrion then tells Lancel that he could do well out of this, and that knighthood is nothing. Then he orders him to tell the Queen that he begs her forgiveness, and he will let her have Pycelle to do with however she will, but he will not be on the council. With respect to Sir Jacelyn Bywater, Lancel is to assure the Queen that he thinks he can win him away from Tyrion. Tyrion also notes he does not want another nephew. Lancel tells him there is no need for concern, since Cersei has him spill his seed on her belly. After he leaves, Tyrion thinks it's fortunate that Lancel's father, Kevan Lannister, has 2 other sons, since, in Tyrion's view, as Cersei will kill Lancel if she finds out he is betraying her, and even if Lancel survives the war, he will never survive Jaime's return to King's Landing. The only question being whether Jaime kills Lancel in a jealous rage, or Cersei kills him to stop Jaime from finding out. Tyrion privately bets on Cersei. Tyrion cannot get to sleep, so he sends Podrick, who was asleep, to summon Bronn and get 2 horses saddled. When Bronn arrives, he asks, "Who pissed in your soup?" To which Tyrion answers, "Cersei." He states he should be used to the taste and that she seems to have mistaken him for Eddard Stark. Bronn replies that he was tall, to which Tyrion responds, "Not after Joffrey took off his head." They leave through the postern gate, then down Shadow Black Lane to the foot of Aegon's High Hill, onto Pig Run Alley. Tyrion reflects that the men that have been hanged have been no match for Cersei, because they were too honest. The only way to defeat Cersei is to play her own game. In the crowded brothel, they are met by Jataya, who leads them to the common room and serves them wine, apologizing for the quality. She cannot find good wine at any price, which Tyrion understands. As Tyrion waits, Dany slides onto his lap, saying she has a cure for him feeling unloved. He tells her that he has grown fond of Alea's remedy. When Alea arrives, she leads him up the stairs and tells him that Dany has a bet with Marie, and has only a fortnight before she loses her black pearls. She leads him to the tower room, telling him that she will sleep while he is gone before he disappears down the shaft to the tunnel. As he leaves the stables on his gelding, he hears music that reminds him of the words Tysha sung to him, who was a lie, a Jaime had hired to make him a man. He arrives at the manse, which has been arranged by Varys as a place to sequester Shae. He tells Varys he wanted her protected by ugly, scary men who did not like having sex with women. She is now protected by a Brovasi daggerman with a hare lip and a lazy eye, 1 eunuch strangler, and a pair of foul-smelling Ibonesi who are fond of axes and each other. If Tyrion had her guarded by his clansmen, it would only be a matter of time before everyone knew of his concubine. He enters the room not intending to disturb Shae, but the sight of her nude body makes him hard. He spreads her legs and starts to lick her until his beard is soaked, and then enters her, and explodes almost at once. She opens her eyes and tells him she just had the sweetest dream. Tyrion thinks of the wars and intrigues, and that he was made for this. This chapter showcases what Tyrion should have done with Pycelle, and that is, make him your creature rather than Cersei's. But also, it is absurd how much time Tyrion dedicates to outmaneuvering Cersei, who he knows shares his own interests, rather than Littlefinger, who he knows to be a traitor to the crown, and Varys, who Cersei even warns him about in Tyrion 12. Varys says so. A line appeared on Cersei's pale white brow, between those lovely eyes. You put too much trust in that eunuch. He serves me well. Or so he have you believe. You think you're the only one he whispers secrets to? He gives each of us just enough to convince us that we'd be helpless without him. He played the same game with me when I first wed Robert. For years I was convinced I had no truer friend at court. But now, She studied his face for a moment. "He says you mean to take the hound from Joffrey." "Damn, Varys. I need Clegane for more important duties." Tyrion decides to leave in place two people he knows to be playing him false, while focusing all his attention on Cersei, who is not even a threat to his power. All in all, Tyrion wasn't that great of a hand of the king. In Chapter 30, Arya wonders what King Harrenhal meant to name the 5 towers of Harrenhal, but they are now known as the Tower of Dread, the Widow's Tower, the Wailing Tower, the Tower of Ghosts, and Kingspire Tower since the burning of Harrenhal. She now sleeps in a niche in the vaults beneath the Wailing Tower. The work is hard, but no harder than the miles she was walking every day, and she can wash and the food is filling. She does not need to find bugs to eat. Hot Pie is assigned to the kitchens and Gendry to the forge, while Arya works for the understeward Whis doing errands, running messages, drawing water, fetching food, and sometimes serving tables in the barracks hall. Arya hates Whis and adds him to her list of names. She occasionally gets to see Hot Pie when she is sent to fetch the food for Whis and his charges. Arya does not want to learn the names of Wys's other charges since it hurts when people she knows die. Lady Shella Went only occupied parts of 2 towers, letting the rest of the castle go to ruin. She left a small staff when she fled, inadequate for the host that now occupies the castle. As a result, the Lannisters have to forage for servants to make more of Harrenhal habitable. Harrenhal covers 3 times the area of Winterfell, but its buildings are much grander. The stables handle 1,000 horses, the Godswood covers 20 acres, the kitchen is as large as Winterfell's Great Hall, and the Hall of the 100 Hearths could handle Tywin's entire host. Some claim the ghosts of Harren the Black and his sons occupy the Wailing Tower, but Arya knows that they died in the Kingspire Tower. The wailing is from the wind, and the ghosts never trouble her. However, she fears living men, including Sir Gregor Clegane and Tywin Lannister, who keeps their apartments in the Kingspire Tower. She considers marching up to Tywin and telling him who she is, but figures she would never get close enough to him, and if she did, he would not believe her, and she would get a beating from Whis, whom she fears more than the Mountain. He hits at the slightest provocation. On the road to Harrenhal, she felt like a sheep, but now she feels like a mouse. The lords and ladies never notice the grey mice under their feet, and Arya hears many secrets by just listening as she does her duties. The slut Pretty Pia is working her way through every night. The wife of the jailer is pregnant either by Sir Alan Stackspear or a single white smile. Lord Leo Lefford keeps a candle lit by his bed because of the ghosts. Sir Donova's squire Jodge cannot hold his water at night. The cook spit on the despised Sir Harrow Swift's food, and Maester Tothmir's serving girl told her brother that Tywin has ordered the Maester to burn a message claiming that Joffrey is a bastard, and to never speak of it again. She also hears from Whis that Stannis Baratheon and Renly Baratheon are both kings, and have joined the fighting. Many of the Lannister men question how long Joffrey can hold the throne, protected only by gold cloaks and ruled by a eunuch, a dwarf, and a woman. There have also been a number of reports of Beric Dondarrion being killed by the Bloody Murmurs, but he has already supposedly been killed by Amory Lorch at Rushing Falls, and twice by the Mountain. A fortnight later, the queerest collection of men Arya has ever seen arrives, the Bloody Murmurs. Whis assures her that she does not want to know them, and is told they are called the Footmen, Toes of the Goat, and Lord Tywin's Bloody Murmurs. They call themselves the Brave Companions, and their leader is the very tall, stick-thin Vargo Hoat. They are housed in the Widow's Tower, for which Arya is thankful. On their first night, Sir Harys Swift's squire is killed, and 2 of the Bloody Murmurs are wounded. Tywin hangs both, along with one of Lord Lewis Leiden's archers, who is supposed to have started the trouble. They do not stay long, but before they leave, she hears that Roose Bolton has occupied the Ruby Ford, and her brother is in Riverrun, which is much closer than Winterfell, but she does not know where it lies in relation to Harrenhal, if only she could get away. She learns that there are captives from the Battle of the Green Fork. They have been given freedom of the castle in return for a pledge that they will not attempt to escape, but Arya is hoping they can help her escape. There are 3 Frey brothers and their bastard brother, but they are soon ransomed. There is also a very fat lordling who is always in the kitchen. one that wears a black cloak with white suns, and Lord Medgar Cerwyn, whom she recognizes. She figures she can get aid from Lord Cerwyn, but learns later that he died from his wounds. Arya hears all sorts of rumors about Lord Tywin's plans. Lord Tywin spends his days with his war council. Arya often catches sight of him and thinks he is strong-looking for an old man, and his face reminds her of her father, although they look nothing alike, and she could never picture Tywin laughing. Sir Amory Lorch arrives one afternoon, looking less frightening in the daylight. He has fewer men than she remembers, and many wounded. She is told that they rode all the way around the lake, chasing Beric Dondarrion and slaying rebels. Arya figures they are talking about the men of the Night's Watch. At the end of the column, she sees Jaqen H'ghar, Roarg, and Baita, with his body covered in half-healed wounds. Jaqen H'ghar still smiles, and his clothes are filthy, but his hair washed and brushed. His eyes pass right over Arya, and she thinks he did not even notice her. Arya thinks that Gendry was right, and she should have let them die. That night, she says the names again: Whis, Dunsen, Chiswick, Polliver, Raff the Sweetling, the Tickler, the Hound, Sir Gregor, Sir Amory Lorch, Sir Ilyn, Sir Meryn, and King Joffrey, and Queen Cersei. She thinks she might add 3 names to the list, but she is too tired to decide. She is dreaming of wolves in the wild when she wakes with Jaqen H'ghar's hand over her mouth. He notes that the boy Ari became a girl, and revealing that he did not see her that afternoon. He then explains that she saved 3 lives, thus he has to repay her by taking 3 lives of her choice, in order to appease the Red God. When Arya asks him to take her to Riverrun, he replies that he will take 3 lives for her, nothing more, and gives her some time to decide whom to kill. Then he leaves before she can even light her candle. The next morning, Arya yawns in Whis' presence, and he warns her not to let her mouth drop open again, telling her he will feed her tongue to his bitch, and twists her ear to make certain she heard. As she works, she thinks of whom she wants dead, and that, being at war, she should try to kill as many Lannisters as she could, but her father personally killed those he condemned to death. She is not sure she should trust Jaqen and avoids him for a while, which is not hard to do. So Gregor returns, and Whis sends Arya to see if they have clothes that need mending. She arrives to find Chickswick talking, and does not want to interrupt because she might be hit. He is talking about when he was returning from the Tourney of the Hand with Sir Gregor, Raff, Joss Steelwood, and Aegon. They stopped at an alehouse where the brewer did not stop talking. They knew better than to talk because the mountain was seething over the joust with the Night of Flowers. The brewer's girl was serving, and they were touching her. Finally, Joss put his hand up her skirt, and she screamed, running to the kitchen. The brewer went to Sir Gregor and asked that his men leave the girl alone. Sir Gregor had the girl brought before him, paid the brewer a silver, and left her right there. Her brother ran in from the cellar, and Raff stabbed him with a dirk. After Sir Gregor was done, Tobot and Chiswick continued to rape her. Sir Gregor told the brewer the girl was not worth a silver and demanded change, and the brewer gave it to him. They all roar with laughter at the story while Arya sneaks away. When Whis learns she did not ask about the mending, he beats her bloody. 2 days later, she sees Jaqen H'ghar in the barracks hall. Ensuring that Whis is not around, she works her way down to him, filling wine cups until she reaches and whispers Chiswick in his ear. He gives no sign that he heard, and nothing happens until the 3rd day, when she hears that a man fell off the wall walk the previous night. Some are saying Harren's ghost flung him down, and Arya thinks that she is the ghost of Harrenhal, and there is one less name on her list. What is even more disturbing is that Chiswick estimated the girl to have been 18 years old at the time of the event, but Raff corrects him, stating that she was more like 13 years old. The very fat Northern Lord Arya mentions is Willis Manderly, son of Wyman Manderly. We also see the bloody murmurs here, and the crazy assortment of characters in their rank and file. Arya gets a lot of undue hate for naming Chiswick to Jaqen H'ghar rather than Tywin Lannister or the Mountain, but her logic for not trusting Jaqen at first is sound. Moreover, Tywin never makes it onto Arya's kill list. However, if Tywin had died here, that would have almost certainly won the war for Stannis, since without Tywin and Jaime captured, it is unlikely House Tyrell would have sided with the Lannisters unless Kevin stood up and took command of the situation effectively. Chapter 31. Hallis Mollen announces to Catelyn that they are the first to arrive at an area where the trees have been cut down by Stannis Baratheon's foragers to build siege equipment. So Wendell Manderly tells Catelyn that this is not their fight, and Catelyn replies that she was sent here by Robb Stark, and for the good of the realm it must be done. But forging a peace between the brothers will not be easy. She would prefer to be with her dying father, Hoster Tully, in Riverrun, or back in Winterfell. In the distance she can see Storm's End and Stannis' army looking small and insignificant under its walls. Catelyn thinks about the history of Storm's End and of the love between the first Storm King, Durin, and Eleni, the daughter of the sea god and the goddess of the wind. After the wedding, Eleni yielded her maidenhood and immortality. Her parents unleashed Storm and Wind to destroy Durin's hold, killing all but Durin and his wife, who had protected him within her arms. It was the 7th castle he built that managed to withstand the storms. It is said that this castle was built with the help of the Children of the Forest, or a child that became known as Brandon the Builder. Stannis is the first to arrive with a Red Priestess as his standard bearer. Catelyn knows that Renly will be last. Stannis expresses his surprise to find her here and gives his condolences for her husband Eddard Stark, though he notes Stark was no friend of his. Stannis is not grateful for Eddard's part in breaking the siege, saying it was on Robert Baratheon's command. He holds it against Eddard that he took the position of Hand of the King, which he did not even want. Stannis tells her that regardless of his feelings for her husband, Catelyn will have justice for his murder. She responds that Renly promised the same, but she would prefer her daughters back. Stannis promises that her daughters will be found when he takes King's Landing. Catelyn thinks his tone implies dead or alive, and tells him that King's Landing is closer to Dragonstone, but he is at Storm's End. He replies that he needs the power of the Southern Lords to take King's Landing, and so he must take them from his brother, who owes him loyalty and obedience as his elder and rightful king. Stannis then asks if Robert has thrown his lot in with Renly, and is told he is king of the north by the will of the lords and people, and only holds his hand out in friendship. Stannis replies that kings have no friends, only subjects and enemies. At this point, Renly's party arrives with Brienne of Tarth bearing the banner. Renly asks about Stannis' sigil, and the priestess replies it is the fiery heart of the Lord of Light. Renly says it is just as well, since if they had the same banner, the battle would be confused. Catelyn expresses hope that there will be no battle, and Stannis states that the Iron Throne is his by rights, and those who deny this are his foes. Catelyn tells them that this is folly, with the Kingslayer's host reforming at the Golden Tooth, another Lannister host gathering at Castle Rock, and Tywin Lannister at Harrenhal with 20,000 men, and the Lannisters holding King's Landing. Renly immediately demands that Stannis bend his knee to him, and Stannis absolutely refuses, stating he is the eldest and denouncing Renly as a usurper. Renly responds that the Targaryens called Robert a usurper, and he bore up under the shame. Catelyn tries to convince them to be reasonable, only to be rebuked by Stannis, who asserts that he is the rightful king. Stannis also adds that he considers her son no less a traitor than Renly, and promises to deal with Robb in due time. Catelyn asks how he is the rightful king given that Robert had 2 sons, at which Renly laughs, stating that she has not seen Stannis' letter. Stannis tells Catelyn that Joffrey and his siblings are not of Robert's seed, but bastards born of incest between Cersei and her brother. Catelyn asks why Stannis kept this knowledge to himself, and is told that he approached Jon Arryn since he figured that Robert would be more willing to listen to Jon, whom he loved, as opposed to Stannis, from whom such accusations would have seemed self-serving. Renly points out that Jon is dead, and Stannis states that his death was not by happenstance, that Cersei poisoned him. Catelyn, immediately putting the pieces together, adds that her sister Lysa accused the queen of killing her husband. Renly tells Stannis that he may have the greater right, but Renly has the bigger army. Renly reaches under his cloak, and Stannis immediately goes for his sword, but Renly only brings out a peach, offering it to Stannis. Stannis retorts he did not come there to eat fruit, and Renly replies a man should never refuse a peach because life is short, and as the Starks say, winter is coming. Stannis thinks this is a threat, but Renly states it was not, and he tells Stannis he never liked him, but he is of his blood, and if it is Storm's End he wants, he will give it to him. Stannis refuses, saying it is his. Renly states he refuses a peach, a castle, and did not come to his wedding. Stannis sneers that the wedding was a farce, considering Renly married a woman he was scheming to make one of Robert's whores a year before. Renly corrects this, saying he was going to make Margaery Tyrell his queen, but Robert was killed by a boar, and so he got Margaery. He reveals his plan to have a son with her within a year, and then asks Stannis how many sons he has, telling him that if he had a wife that looked like Stannis's, he would send his fool to service her as well. Infuriated, Stannis draws his blade, which shines strangely, roaring that he will not tolerate Renly mocking him to his face, but Brienne moves between them. Stannis tells Renly that he will not kill Renly with Lightbringer, and he will give him till dawn to pledge to him, for the sake of their late mother. In return, Stannis will grant him Storm's End, a seat on the council, and name him his heir until he has a son. Otherwise, he will destroy Renly. Renly laughs, pointing out that he has the strength in banners: House Rowan, House Tarly, House Caron, House Tarth, House Penrose, House Fossaway, House Q, House Mullendore, House Estamont, House Selmy, House Hightower, House Oakhart, House Crane, House Caswell, House Blackbar, House Morrigan, House Beesbury, House Shermer, House Dunn, House Footley, and Stannis' wife house, Florent. What is present is only the vanguard, with 100,000 foot still to arrive. After exchanging taunts, Stannis gallops away, the Red Priestess staying long enough to say before also leaving, "Look to your own sins, Lord Renly." Catelyn tells Renly that his brother is the lawful heir if Joffrey is Jaime's son. Renly replies this is true only while he lives, and asks if Catelyn would agree that it is a fool's law since he would be a better king than either Robert or Stannis. He will be a great king, strong yet generous, clever, just, diligent, loyal to my friends and terrible to my enemies, yet capable of forgiveness. Patient, Catelyn adds, humble. Renly laughs and states, "You must allow a king some flaws, my lady." Catelyn feels very tired. She has failed, and her son will have to face the Lannisters alone while the Baratheon brothers destroy each other. She thinks how much Renly is like his brother Robert, but Robert had Eddard to temper him. Eddard would have prevailed on Robert to bring the whole force to besiege Stannis, the besieger, instead of forging ahead with only the horses and no fodder. Now he must come to battle soon or starve. Catelyn accompanies Renly back to his pavilion, sending Hol Mollen to tend to the horses. Once inside, Renly states his brother has not changed, and since he will not take his gifts, maybe he should fight. Lord Mathis Rowan points out that the castle is well provisioned and has a strong garrison under Sir Courtenay Penrose. They can let Stannis have a profitless siege. Renly, however, is concerned that men will say he fears Stannis. Lord Randall Tarly thinks they cannot leave him unblooded since he may grow stronger than Renly, and the others seem to agree. Renly decides that they will fight. At this, Catelyn sees no point in not returning to Riverrun, so she asks to leave, but is told she cannot. She must watch so she can tell her son what happens to rebels. Renly then gives command of the centre to Lord Mathis Rowan, the left to Bryce Caron, and the reserve to Lord Eldon Estamont, while Renly takes the right. Lord Mathis Rowan asks who will have the van, and Sir John Fossaway first asks the honour, but Sir Guyard the Green states that it should be one of the seven. Randall Tarly states he led Mace Tyrell's van since before most of those present were born. After a clamour fills the pavilion, Renly gives the honour to Sir Loras Tyrell. Sir Loras accepts and asks for one of his knights to ride beside him, so that the Stag and Rose can go to battle side by side. Renly gives Brienne this honour. She wants to fight by his side, but is told that there are 4 of the Rainbow Guard that will fight beside him. She accepts the duty, but requests that she arm for battle. Renly accepts. Catelyn can hear someone snigger. Renly then asks them to leave him. Before she leaves, Catelyn asks to visit a sept she saw in a village, and Renly tells Sir Robar Royce to provide an escort, but to return by dawn. Catelyn tells him he should also pray, not for victory, but for wisdom. Renly tells Sir Loras to remain with him to help him pray. Sir Robar Royce is a member of the Rainbow Guard, and Catelyn knows him slightly, that he is known for his skill in the tourney. The son of Yoin Royce, bannerman to House Arryn. She asks him about this, and he says his father owes fealty, as does his heir. But he is a second son. He is tired of tourneys and looking for glory. She arrives at her camp to find Shad preparing the meal, Hal Mullen dicing with 3 of his men, and Lucas Blackwood sharpening his dagger. Lucas asks if they fight or flee, and she says they pray. This chapter has so many funny moments, like Renly and Loras going to pray together. Renly telling Stannis that the boar got Robert and I got Marjorie. You'll be pleased to know she came to me, a maid. And Stannis replying, in your bed, she's like to die that way. Or even the peach is so weird, but also sad, especially when Stannis tells Davos later, Renly offered me a peach at our parley, mocked me, defied me, threatened me, and offered me a peach. I thought he was drawing a blade and went for mine own. Was that his purpose, to make me show fear? Or was it one of his pointless jests? When he spoke of how sweet the peach was, did his words have some hidden meaning? The king gave a shake of his head. Only Renly could vex me so with a piece of fruit. He brought his doom on himself with his treason. But I did love him, Davos. I know that now. I swear. I will go to my grave thinking of my brother's peach. Which I think goes to show that Stannis will never admit it, but he really is traumatized after killing his brother. In chapter 32, Sandor Clegane is telling Sansa that if she keeps Joffrey waiting, it will only be worse. As Sansa is making herself pretty for Joffrey, she wonders if Joffrey has heard about her meetings with Ser Dontos. As they are walking, Sansa asks the Hound what she has done, and it is told that it is what her kingly brother, Robb Stark, has done. Sansa tells the Hound that Robb is the traitor and she had no part. She can only think that if Robb harmed Jaime Lannister, she will have to face Sir Ilyn Payne. The Hound tells her again that they trained her well, calling her a little bird. She is led to the lower bailey where a crowd is gathered. She can hear Lord Giles Roseby coughing as they part to let her pass. Sir Horace Redwyne and Rober Redwyne avoid her gaze as she passes. There is a cat shot by a boat mewling on the ground. Ser Dontos, riding a broomstick as commanded by the king, whispered to her to be brave. In the centre stands Joffrey, with Sir Boros Blount and Sir Meryn Trant beside him. She kneels before him, but Joffrey snaps that kneeling will not save her and she must answer for her brother's treasons. She is slow to get up, and the Hound, not ungently, pulls her up when commanded. Sir Lancel Lannister now speaks to her, claiming that Robb fell upon Sir Stafford Lannister with an army of wargs near Lannisport, using some sorcery. Thousands of men were butchered as they slept. According to Lancel, the Northmen feasted on their flesh after the slaughter. Joffrey asks if she has anything to say. Ser Dontos tells him that she is shocked witless. Joffrey then brings up that her direwolf savaged him, and Sansa retorts that it was Arya's wolf, Nymeria, and that he killed Lady even though she never hurt him. Joffrey replies that it was Eddard Stark that killed Lady, and he killed him. Joffrey then recounts how he shot a man in the throat at the gates that was bigger than her father. He would shoot her also, but Cersei says they will kill Jaime. He then commands the Hound to hit Sansa, but Ser Dontos intervenes by whacking her over the head with his morning star, a melon on the end of a stick. People are laughing, but despite Sansa's prayers, Joffrey does not. Instead, he calls to his Kingsguard, telling them to save her face. Sir Meryn Trant flings Dontos down while Sir Boros first slams a fist into Sansa's belly, and then starts to lay the flat of his blade across her thighs. The Hound rasps enough, but the king orders Boros to make her naked, and he tears the silk of her bodice away, exposing her breasts. She can hear sniggers as Joffrey orders her beat bloody. At that point, a voice demands, "What is the meaning of this?" Sansa looks to see the arrival of a furious Tyrion Lannister, flanked by his sellsword and one of his tribesmen who demands Blount tell him what sort of knight beats helpless maids. Sir Boros replies, one that serves his king, drawing his sword, with Sir Meryn stepping beside him. Bronn warns them to be careful, as they don't want to get blood all over their white cloaks. Tyrion asks for someone to give Sansa something to cover herself with, and Sandor tosses her his cloak. Tyrion then asks Joffrey whether he has no regard for her honor, considering that she is to be his queen one day. Joffrey replies that he is punishing her for having the blood of the wolf, and Tyrion replies that Joffrey has the wits of a goose. Joffrey insists that the king can do as he likes, and Tyrion asks if he knows what happened to Aerys II Targaryen, who also did what he liked. So Boris warns Tyrion that no one is to threaten the king, but Tyrion responds he is only educating him, and then tells Bronn and Timett to kill Sir Boris if he opens his mouth again. When Sir Boris, turning red, states that the queen will hear of this, Tyrion asks if they should send for Cersei. When Joffrey has nothing to say, Tyrion tells him to learn to use his ears more and his mouth less, lest his reign be shorter than Tyrion himself. He points out that brutality will not win his people's love, nor his queen's. Joffrey replies that Cersei taught him to value fear over love, and Sansa fears him. Tyrion only notes that it is a pity Stannis and Renly are not 12-year-old girls as well. Tyrion then continues by ordering Bronn and Timett to bring Sansa. They take her to the Tower of the Hand. She is shaking and moving as if she were in a dream. Serving girls clean her up, and Maester Franken treats her wounds. Sansa thinks how the Hound hated knights, and now she hates them also. And she does not believe they are true knights. She sleeps. She wakes that night and her legs pain when she gets up. Outside her door, she finds a woman whom she tells she wants to go to the Godswood. She wants to find Sir Dontos and beg him to take her home before it is too late. The woman tells her that Tyrion said she was not to leave. When food comes in the morning, she tells the servant to take it away. Later, Tyrion arrives and tells her that she is a guest, not a prisoner. Tyrion then tells the story of Robb's victory. Sir Stafford's host was encamped outside Oxcross. He explains that there was no army of wargs or sorcery involved, as Sir Lancel claimed, as Lancel wouldn't know a warg from a wart, according to Tyrion. Sorcery is the sauce men spoon over failure to hide the flavor of their own incompetence. Robb's soldiers crept into the camp and cut the horse lines, and then Robb sent his direwolf among them, causing a stampede. The panicked horses trampled the camp, killing many. Most of the rest fled in horror, casting aside their weapons. Among the dead are Sir Stafford, killed by Lord Rickard Karstark, Sir Rupert Brax, Sir Limond Vickery, Lord Crackhole, and Lord Antario Jast. 50 had been taken prisoner, including Jast's sons and Martin Lannister. The incompetent Sir Stafford had not even bothered to post sentries, thinking himself safe and secure in the Westerlands, and most of his army were raw recruits, the sweepings of Lannisport. The only mystery is how Robb reached Oxcross, since Lannister forces hold the Golden Tooth and the men stationed there swear Robb didn't pass them. Tyrion ultimately declares it unimportant. Robb Stark is his father's problem, while Joffrey is his. Tyrion then asks Sansa how she feels about his nephew, and she responds that she loves him with all her heart more than ever. Tyrion is amused and tells her someone taught her to lie well, which she may be grateful for one day. He then asks if she has flowered, to which she answers no. He says that is good and that he does not intend for her to marry Joffrey, since there will never be a reconciliation between the Lannisters and Starks with the way Joffrey has acted, calling it a pity as the marriage was one of Robert I Baratheon's better notions. Sansa is concerned that this is a trick and states that she only wants to be loyal. Tyrion adds, and far from any Lannisters, but admits that he cannot blame her, as when he was her age, he wanted the same thing. He then notes that she visits the Godswood every day and asks what she prays for. Sansa prays for Robb's victory and Joffrey's death, but claims she prays for an end to the fighting. Tyrion tells her there will be another battle between Robb and Tywin Lannister, and that will settle the issue, warning her not to think that Oxcross was significant, and to pray that her brother bends his knee, and he will return her to Winterfell once there is peace. He offers to have some of his clansguard guide her, maybe Chella if she prefers a woman. Sansa, thinking about Sir Dontos rescuing her, tells him that the wildlings frighten her. He responds that they also frighten Joffrey and the Lickspittles and sycophants who make up his Kingsguard, so no one would harm her. When she tells him she would prefer sleeping in her own bed and the tower is where her father's men were slain and their ghosts give her bad dreams, he agrees to have her escorted back to her bedchamber. So Tyrion gives a really good analysis of the war to Sansa in this chapter. They tell me you visit the Godswood every day. What do you pray for, Sansa? I pray for Robb's victory and Joffrey's death, and for home, for Winterfell. I pray for an end to the fighting. We'll have that soon enough. There'll be another battle between your brother Robb and my lord father, and that will settle the issue. Robb will beat him, Sansa thought. He will beat your uncle and your brother Jaime. He'll beat your father too." It was as if her face were an open book. So easily did the dwarf read her hopes. "Do not take Oxcross too much to heart, my lady," he told her, not unkindly. "A battle is not a war, and my lord father is assuredly not my uncle Stafford. Tyrion is right. The war will be undecided until Tywin or Robb is defeated. It is also noticeable that the Hound is the only member of Joffrey's Kingsguard who doesn't strike her in the books. We also see Dontos trying to protect Sansa, and the Redwyne twins ashamed to be there when Sansa is brought in." Chapter 33. As night descends upon the settlement, Sir Robar Royce, Sir Wendell Manderly, and Catelyn arrive. The sept, with its weathered and uneven structure adorned with 7 walls symbolizing various gods, becomes the focal point. Catelyn, sensing the gravity of the moment, enters alone, recalling the teachings of Septon Osmond about the distinct facets of each god. Once a source of comfort, the sept now stands as a poignant reminder of a bygone era. The crude chalk drawings in this unfamiliar settlement sharply contrast with the elaborate masks painted by Septon Chade in Winterfell, reflecting the severity of the surroundings and the resilience of people everywhere to find solace amid hardship. Within the sept's walls, Catelyn feels a profound weight of darkness and spirituality. Primitive drawings on the walls unveil a direct relationship between peasants and their gods. Wrestling with her inner struggles, Catelyn implores the Mother for guidance. Amid the flickering weak light, she finds solace in recalling Eddard Stark's faith. The father's visage triggers flashback of friends and family, but the ethereal moment is disrupted by the intrusion of smoke. Wiping her eyes, Catelyn contemplates the contrast of life and death. Hunger interrupts her dream, and she is reminded of the void left by Ned's death. Contemplating the potential fallout of revealing Cersei's children's true parentage, Catelyn envisions the disastrous effects it could have had on both Cersei and her son if King Robert had found out about Joffrey's true father. Catelyn thinks about the shared social disapproval of incestuous offspring by followers of the Seven and the Old Gods. A sudden realization strikes. Jon Arryn and Eddard Stark likely knew the truth, contributing to their tragic deaths at Cersei's hands. The dance between power and deceit becomes apparent to Catelyn, and amid these discoveries, she prays to the many gods seeking protection for her children. The pristine innocence of her prayers shatters as Sir Robar urgently warns her to leave before daybreak. The army marches in a serious and disciplined manner, appearing as a sea of grey troops on grey horses with subdued flags symbolizing unity before combat. The atmosphere shifts dramatically at Renly's pavilion, where the solid members of the Rainbow Guard, Sirs Aemon Q and Parman Crane, stand out in their colourful gear. Inside, a tense mood prevails as Brienne of Tarth armors the king amid the clinking of armor and strategic muttering. Renly's War Council are having tactical discussions about the upcoming battle. Lord Randall Tarly and Mathis Rowan have conversations over troop disposition and potential battlefield strategies. Realizing how serious things are, Catelyn asks Renly for a meeting. She is told to wait while the discussion builds towards a potential confrontation. "Your Grace," Mathis Rowan said with a sideways glance at Catelyn. "As I was saying, our battles are well drawn up. Why wait for daybreak? Sound the advance. And have it said that I won by treachery with an unchivalrous attack? Dawn was the chosen hour. Chosen by Stannis," Randall Tarly pointed out. "He'd have us charge into the teeth of the rising sun. We'll be half blind." "Only until first shock," Renly said confidently. "Sir Loras will break them, and after that, it will be chaos." Renly then states, "When my brother falls, see that no insult is done to his corpse. He is my own blood. I will not have his head paraded about on a spear." "And if he yields?" Lord Tarly asked. "Yields?" Lord Rowan laughed. "When Mace Tyrell laid siege to Storm's End, Stannis ate rats rather than open his gates." "Well, I remember," which is in reference to the fact that Renly nearly starved because of Mace Tyrell and the men in the tent with him right now. When Lord Tarly asks what to do if Stannis yields, both Renly and Lord Rowan are amused, and Renly recounts how Sir Gawain Wild tried to escape to surrender to Mace Tyrell during the siege of Storm's End. and Stannis was going to hurl him out using a catapult. He was only dissuaded by Maester Cresson telling him they might have to eat their dead. Mercifully, the Onion Knight saved them from having to eat the flesh of corpses, though Renly notes this was little comfort for Sir Gawain, who died in his cell. "Your Grace," Catelyn had waited patiently, but time grew short. "You promised me a word." Renly nodded. "See to your battles, my lords. Oh, and if Barristan Selmy is at my brother's side, I want him spared." "There's been no word of Barristan since Joffrey cast him out," Lord Rowan objected. "I know that old man. He needs a king to guard. Or who is he? Yet he never came to me, and Lady Catelyn says he is not with Robb Stark at Riverrun. Where else but with Stannis? As you say, your grace, no harm will come to him." The lords bowed deeply and departed. "Say your say, Lady Stark," Renly said. Brienne swept his cloak over his broad shoulders. "The Lannisters tried to kill my son Bran. 1,000 times I have asked myself why. Your brother gave me my answer. There was a hunt the day he fell. Robert and Ned and most of the other men rode out after boar, but Jaime Lannister remained at Winterfell, as did the Queen." Renly was not slow to take the implication. "So you believe the boy caught them at their incest? I beg you, my lord, grant me leave to go to your brother Stannis and tell him what I suspect." "To what end?" "Robb will set aside his crown if you and your brother will do the same," she said, hoping it was true. She would make it true if she must. Robb would listen to her, even if his lords would not. "Let the 3 of you call for a great council, such as the realm has not seen for 100 years. We will send to Winterfell, so Bran may tell his tale and all men may know the Lannisters for the true usurpers. Let the assembled lords of the 7 kingdoms choose who shall rule them." Renly laughed. "Tell me, my lady, do direwolves vote on who should lead the pack?" Brienne brought the king's gauntlets and great helm. "The time for talk is done. Now we see who is stronger." Renly pulls on his heavy green gold armor. "I beg you, in the name of the mother," Catelyn began when a sudden gust of wind flung open the door of the tent. She thought she glimpsed movement, but when she turned her head, it was only the king's shadow, shifting against the silken walls. She heard Renly begin a jest, his shadow moving, lifting its sword, black on green, candles guttering, shivering. Something was queer. Wrong. Then she saw Renly's sword still in its scabbard, sheathed still, but the shadow sword. Then Catelyn sees a shadow lifting a sword that takes Renly in the throat. Brienne catches Renly as he stumbles into her, his blood flowing over her armor. Sir Robar and Sir Aemon come rushing in, and seeing Brienne covered in Renly's blood, immediately assume she killed him. Sir Aemon instantly attacks with a battle axe as Catelyn screams, "No!" Brienne is soon in battle with Sir Aemon and the 2 men-at-arms with them. Catelyn starts to tell Sir Robar, who hangs back uncertainly, that it was Stannis, only being able to explain it as some sort of sorcery, a shadow, swearing on her husband's grave and her honor. So Robar promises to hold them off and leaves the tent. Brienne has taken out the men-at-arms, but now the armored Sir Aemon is in her wool. Catelyn bashes an iron brazier over Sir Aemon's helm, sending him to his knees, and Brienne, seeing the chance, slashes through the tent side. Catelyn tells her to follow her slowly so they do not raise suspicion. As they escape, Brienne says she saw nothing, and Catelyn tells her it was a shadow, and she could feel Stannis. Brienne swears she will kill Stannis with Renly's sword. They arrive at Catelyn's camp, and Lady Stark explains that Renly is dead, and there will be no battle. Brienne follows Catelyn's urgent instructions to select one of the many extra horses, stressing the importance of making a quick getaway before they are noticed. Catelyn gives them the order to ride fearlessly, and, if needed, to kill anybody who tries to obstruct their departure. Catelyn's thoughts stray into what will happen now as they gallop out of the camp. She muses over how, following Renly's untimely death, Stannis is set to gain all of Renly's political power, amassed in a single evil blow. The lords in attendance, who were previously ardent followers of Renly, must now make the difficult decision to side with the remaining members of the Baratheon. This decision seems unavoidable in the wake of Renly's untimely demise. the terrifying recollection of Stannis branding Robb Stark a traitor and someone who needed to be punished reappears. When Catelyn thinks back to Stannis' menacing warning that Robb's moment for reckoning is inevitable, a cold feeling runs through her. A shadow of approaching danger hovers over her thoughts as she rides. This chapter properly introduces some really important Tyrell Bannermen who we will see in the later books and have real importance in the Winds of Winter. For example, Mathis Rowan is the one Jon Connington and Fagon will have to face when they take Storm's End. Randall Tarly is the one who was holding Margaery Tyrell before her trial and is the one who Kevan Lannister thinks is the most dangerous of Mace Tyrell's Bannermen. Now, what was the Shadow Baby that killed Renly Baratheon? Well, we believe similar to what Preston Jacobs does, that it was Teak or the creature was being controlled by Stannis in some way. Our evidence for this is what happens in one of George R.R. Martin's favourite films, Forbidden Planet, where there is a space creature that can't be destroyed and it kills several crew members, but only after Dr. Morbius wakes up from a deep sleep does the creature disappear, which is eerily similar to how Stannis describes what happened the night Renly died. For a long time, the king did not speak. Then, very softly, he said, "I dream of it sometimes, of Renly's dying, a green tent, candles, a woman screaming, and blood." Stannis looked down at his hands. "I was still abed when he died. Your Devon will tell you. He tried to wake me. Dawn was nigh, and my lords were waiting, fretting. I should have been a horse, armoured. I knew Renly would attack at break of day. Devon says I thrashed and cried out, but what does it matter? It was a dream. I was in my tent when Renly died, and when I woke, my hands were clean." When Lord Commander Mormont's men arrive at the Fist of First Men, Jon Snow can't help but agree that it actually looks like a fist plunging up from the ground, because of the way the trees and the stones emerge from the surface. He is amazed at the beauty of the landscape, but he is annoyed at Ghost, who keeps running away from the group. The third time he whistles to call him back, Lord Mormont orders him to quit and focus on the task. He can go looking for him later once they are done. Once they reach the top of the hill, the Lord Commander states that it is good ground and orders to set a camp. Thorin Smallwood agrees that it is indeed a good place to settle and calls the place an old and strong one, which causes Lord Mormont's raven to cry out, "Old, old, old!" much to the annoyance of the Lord Commander. Jon did notice that the long walk has taken a toll on the old bear's stamina, and on his mood too. When Jon argues that it will take a while to climb down to get water at the river, Lord Mormont isn't pleased with his observation, so Jon wisely chooses to shut up rather than comment further. Jon knows that although the travelling is really wearing on the Lord Commander, he's trying not to show it. They resolve that they will stock abundant supplies of water. The group sets up the camp in the stone ring that dates back to the Dawn Age, built by the First Men. Once he sets the tent for the Lord Commander, and seeing to the horses, Jon goes down to the hill to find Ghost, that suddenly appears near him, as if to tell him something. Jon tries to bring him back to the camp, but once they get to the edge of it, Ghost hesitates again. He must have smelled something that he really doesn't like, Jon thinks, and feeling a sense of uneasiness, takes his time to observe the position of the camp and the environment around them. The milk water runs close, golden under the last rays of the sun. The horizon is completely covered by white mountains, inhospitable and cold. Woods circle them southward and eastward, like a green carpet of roots, leaves, and logs dotted by the blood red of the weirwoods. Billions of leaves whisper in the wind, whispers hundreds, if not thousands, years older than Jon himself. That realization sends chills down Jon's spine, who thinks that literally everything could be hiding in those woods, and the group has no way of knowing what exactly is in there. Ghost is not the only predator in that forest. Once it gets dark, the arrival of Samwell Tarly interrupts Jon's thoughts, happy to see him. When asked how his day has been, Sam replies that it was overall fine, so Jon decides not to cause worry in his friend's heart and does not share his concerns with him. Jon suggests that Sam prepares the ravens to leave, as Lord Commander Mormont will want to send messages to the Wall while waiting for Qhorin Halfhand. Sam wishes to free them all, since they hate to be caged. He would hate that too if he had wings, Jon says. to which Sam replies that if he were really a raven, he'd be at Castle Black eating pork pie. Once they come back at the camp, they see that the ravens are nervous. They keep squawking, "Snow! Snow!" which makes Jon grow warier and warier. Jon gets inside Lord Commander's tent, where he is talking to some of his officers regarding what to do next. Mormont orders for some spiced wine, and while Jon obliges, carefully mixing the wine to the Lord Commander's taste, he overhears the conversation between him and the officers. According to Jarman Buckwell, following the Milkwater is the easiest way to the Frostfangs, although Mance Rayder will know of their approach immediately. Other options are proposed by Sir Mallador Locke, Giant's Stair, or Skirling Pass. So Otten Withers is against the Frostfangs because of the season, and Lord Mormont states that he does not want to risk Frostfangs unless he has to. His plan is to remain where they are at the Fist, so that they can exploit the better position if the wildlings come for battle. This way, they can use their strategic advantage even if the wildlings outnumber them. He doesn't believe that Craster, although awful, lied to them about the wildlings' whereabouts, so the Rangers will limit their ranging on their side of the river. The officers leave and Jon Snow offers supper to Mormont. Lord Commander Mormont then asks Jon whether Ghost has found any game or not, since he would really fancy some fresh meat to eat. Unfortunately, he hasn't. Then he proceeds to ask Jon what he thinks about keeping the Rangers close. After an initial hesitation, Jon then replies that he doesn't understand how they're going to find his uncle if they stay close. Mormont pushes him a bit and Jon understands his intentions. 300 men leave very visible trails, and the fires from the Fist are visible for miles and miles around. After all, it is easier for a man to find 300 than for 300 to find one, especially in such a vast area where 300 or 3,000 searches wouldn't make any difference at all. Jon mentions that his uncle may be dead, to which Mormont replies that he might still come back as a White. The commander decides to forsake supper and orders Jon to wake him at the first lights. Jon, on the other hand, is very hungry and joins Gren, Dolores Ed, Hake, and Dywin for supper. Dywin states there's a smell he doesn't like, a smell of cold. This makes Jon even more wary, as he remembers that the night the dead came, the air smelled cold. Suddenly, Ghost appears again, seemingly preoccupied. He was the same that night, so when he starts to go, Jon follows into the scary forest. Once he catches up with the direwolf, he's digging something from the ground. Jon fears it might be a body. Jon brushes the loose soil away to reveal a rounded bundle, perhaps 2 feet across. When he pulled it free, whatever was inside shifted and clinked. Treasure, he thought. But the shapes were wrong to be coins, and the sound was wrong for metal. A length of frayed rope bound the bundle together. Jon unsheathed his dagger and cut it. The bundle turned and its contents spilled out onto the ground, glittering dark and bright. He saw a dozen knives, leaf-shaped spearheads, numerous arrowheads. Jon picked up a dagger blade, feather-light and shiny, black, hiltless, dragonglass. What the maesters call obsidian. Had Ghost uncovered some ancient cache of the Children of the Forest, buried here for thousands of years? The Fist of the First Men was an old place. Only, beneath the dragonglass was an old warhound, made from an oryx horn and banded in bronze. Jon shook the dirt from inside it, and a stream of arrowheads fell out. He pulled up a corner of the cloth the weapons had been wrapped in, rubbing it between his fingers. Good wool, thick, a double weave, damp but not rotted. It could not have been long in the ground. And it was dark. He seized a handful and pulled it close to the torch. Not dark, black. Even before Jon stood and shook it out, he knew what he had. The black cloak of a sworn brother of the Night's Watch. So, in this chapter, even before digging out the dragonglass, Jon remarks to himself, whatever was here had been put here recently. So, this seems to confirm that the dragonglass was put there quite recently for the Watch to find. But how would the person who left it buried there know that the Night's Watch would travel so far north and in such great number that they might even have a chance to dig it up? Well, it could be Bloodraven, who would have sent Cold Hands to leave the dragonglass to be found, since they would know about the great ranging ahead of time, and might have actually caused it by having Ghost find the corpses that were brought into Castle Black. However, it might also have been Benjen Stark, who recently disappeared, and the dragon glass was also recently buried in good fresh wool, unlike Cold Hands' wool, which is more shabby than Benjen's clothing. The last candidate is a future Bran or the Three-Eyed Crow, who is not Bloodraven despite the TV show conflating the two, and a future Bran might have used Bloodraven or Cold Hands as his instruments to leave the Dragonglass daggers to be found. However, we'll need more information in the Winds of Winter to speculate further. Bran is in the forge working the bellows for Mikken when Maester Luwin sends Albelly for him. The servant announces that Robb sent a raven with news. Albelly carries him to Maester Luwin, where there are Rickon and the two Freys, Big Walder and Little Walder too. The message from Robb informs of victory at Oxcross and Ashvermont. He conquered the stronghold of House Marbrand and that Sir Stafford Lannister was slain in battle. The news does not meet the expectations of the Stark children, as they wish for Robb to come back home. Rickon tugged at the Maester's robe. Is Robb coming home? Not just yet, I fear. There are battles yet to fight. Was it Lord Tywin he defeated? Asked Bran. No, said the Maester. Sir Stafford Lannister commanded the enemy host. He was slain in the battle. Bran had never even heard of Sir Stafford Lannister. He found himself agreeing with Big Walder when he said, Lord Tywin is the only one who matters. Tell Robb I want him to come home, said Rickon. He can bring his wolf home too, and mother and father. Though he knew Lord Eddard was dead, sometimes Rickon forgot. Willfully, Bran suspected. His little brother was stubborn as only a boy of 4 can be. Bran was glad for Robb's victory, but disquieted as well. He remembered what Osha had said the day that his brother had led his army out of Winterfell. He's marching the wrong way, the Wildly woman had insisted. Bran doesn't know why, but Osha's fear unsettles him as well. Unlike the Starks, who feel a deep love and affection for each other, the Freys do not care for their kin, as the only thing that seems to matter to them is the succession line, much to Maester Luwin and Bran's disgust. Sadly, no victory is without cost. Maester Luwin turned to the Walders. My lords, your uncle's Lord Steffron Frey was among those who lost their lives at Oxcross. He took a wound in the battle, Robb writes. It was not thought to be serious, but 3 days later, he died in his tent, asleep. Big Walder shrugged. He was very old. 5 and 60, I think. Too old for battles. He was always saying he was tired. Little Walder hooted. Tired of waiting for our grandfather to die, you mean? Does this mean Sir Aemon's the heir now? Don't be stupid, his cousin said. The sons of the first son come before the second son. So Ryman is next in line, and then Edwin, and Black Walder, and Peter Pimple, and then Aegon and all his sons. Ryman is too old, said Little Walder. Past 40, I bet, and he has a bad belly. Do you think he'll be Lord? I'll be Lord. I don't care if he is. Maester Luwin cut in sharply. You ought to be ashamed of such talk, my lords. Where is your grief? Your uncle is dead. Yes, said Little Walder. We're very sad. They weren't, though. Bran got a sick feeling in his belly. They like the taste of this dish better than I do. He asked Maester Luwin to be excused. It is Osha who comes to get him to his chambers. Still wondering about her words, he asks her if she really knows the way north that well. She replies that the way is easy. All you have to do is look for the ice dragon and chase the blue star in the rider's eye. This leads Bran to wonder about the existence of giants, children of the forest, and White Walkers. Osha states to have seen the giants, to have heard the stories of the children, and does not give a real answer about the White Walkers. When Bran asks, have you ever seen a three-eyed crow? She laughingly replies that she hasn't, nor wishes to. She leaves him in his rooms right next to the window, where he can see the yard below. A few moments later, Jojen and Meera Reed join him. Bran challenges the boy, stating that his dream didn't really come true, to which Jojen replies that green dreams take strange shapes, and their truth is hard to grasp. Bran wants to hear his bad dream, and Jojen reveals it only after Bran states he'll trust his words no matter how queer they may sound. It is the sea that comes. The sea? I dreamed that the sea was lapping all around Winterfell. I saw black waves crashing against the gates and towers, and then the salt water came flowing over the walls and filled the castle. Drowned men were floating in the yard. When I first dreamed the dream back at Greywater, I didn't know their faces, but now I do. That Albelly is one, the guard who called our names at the feast. Your Septon's another, your Smith as well. Micken. Bran was as confused as he was dismayed. But the sea is hundreds and hundreds of leagues away, and Winterfell's walls are so high, the water couldn't get in even if it did come. In the dark of night, the salt sea will flow over these walls, said Jojen. I saw the dead, bloated, and drowned. We have to tell them, Bran said. Alabelly and Micken, and Septon Chayle. Tell them not to drown. It will not save them, replied the boy in green. Meera came to the window seat and put a hand on his shoulder. They will not believe Bran, no more than you did. Jojen sat on Bran's bed. Tell me what you dream. Though all Bran feels is fear, he confides with them, as he has sworn to trust them, and as Stark of Winterfell always honors his sworn word. He explains that he has different kinds of dreams. The wolf dreams in which he hunts, runs, and kills squirrels aren't that bad, because in those dreams he's not a cripple anymore. In other dreams, a crow tells him to fly, and what really scares him is a weird tree calling his name. But the worst kind of dreams are the ones where he falls. He never used to fall before. He could go everywhere just by climbing, and he could always trust his feet. But then he fell, and now he keeps falling all the time in his dreams. Then Jojen calls him Warg. Bran looks at him, his eyes wide. What? Warg, shapeshifter, beastling. That is what they will call you, if they should ever hear of your wolf dreams. The names made him afraid again. Who will call me? Your own folk, in fear. Some will hate you if they know what you are. Some will even try to kill you. Old Nan told stories of beastlings and shape changes sometimes. In the stories, they were always evil. I'm not like that, Bran said. I'm not. It's only dreams. The wolf dreams are no true dreams. You have your eye closed tight whenever you're awake. But as you drift off, it flutters open and your soul seeks out its other half. The power is strong in you. I don't want it. I want to be a knight. A knight is what you want. A warg is what you are. You can't change that, Bran. You can't deny it or push it away. You are the winged wolf, but you will never fly. Jojen got up and walked to the window. Unless you open your eye. To the question on how to open it if it is not there, Jojen replies that he must seek with his heart, for once he'll open it, he'll see past, future, and truth. In the following days, Bran tries to open his third eye and to warn the people at the castle, both without succeeding. Micken says that he always wanted to see the sea, and that the gods are good to bring it to him, a humble smith. Septon Chayle states that the gods will take him when they see fit, though it doesn't seem likely that he'll drown, since growing up on the White Knife made him a strong swimmer. The only one who pays attention to warning is Alebelly, who avoids wells and baths so much that the guards threw him in a tub of scalding water to get rid of the stink. Days after, Sir Rodrik returns to Winterfell with a prisoner, Lord Bolton's bastard's personal servant, who stinks as much, if not more, than Albelly before the bath. It is said that he helped the bastard to murder Lady Hornwood. Maester Luwin and Sir Rodrik discuss about longships pillaging and raiding the shores. Leopold Tolhart has sent his nephew Benfrey to deal with them. Sir Rodrik comments that the Reapers would never dare if their main strength weren't miles south. He assures Bran that he will not bring Albelly with him to deal with him, so Bran hopefully thinks that he will not drown if they stay away from the sea. Meera thinks the same, but Jojen disagrees. This makes the siblings fight. Why would the gods send a warning if things can't be changed? To which Jojen replies that the things he sees always come true. Meera says that both Alebelly and Bran should fight their fate, which scares Bran. He wonders if Jojen has seen him drowned as well, to which he replies he saw him and Rickon laying dead at his feet, their face skinned with a red blade. Meera argues that she could kill him, and Jojen replies that the guards wouldn't let her, and even if she'll tell them, they won't believe her. Bran reminds them that he has personal guards too, but Jojen shakes his head, his eyes full of pity. In his green dreams, he saw Bran and Rickon down in the crypts, and his dreams never lie. Whoever sent Jojen the vision of the Walders preferring their meal over Bran's isn't seeing the future, but relaying information faster than what would normally be possible. The same with Bran knowing about their father's death before the Ravens could deliver the news. So Bran has 3 different kinds of dreams, and this is extremely important. The wolf dreams are when Bran shares Summer's skin, and there is nothing too insidious about this. Just Bran exercising his warging abilities while he sleeps, since we know darkness enhances warging powers. Next are the tree dreams, which we suspect are what Bloodraven in the cave sends Bran to communicate with him. These dreams are designed to lure Bran north, and, as Bloodraven describes, I could not come to you, except in dreams. I have watched you for a long time, watched you with 1,000 eyes and one, and now you are come to me at last, Brandon Stark, though the hour is late. However, what is most scary is Bran's 3-eyed crow dreams, which Bran thinks were sent to him by Bloodraven, and that he is the 3-eyed crow, who told him to fly or die. In A Dance with Dragons, this exchange happens. Are you the 3-eyed crow? Bran heard himself say. A 3-eyed crow should have 3 eyes. A crow? If you read carefully, Bloodraven has no idea what Bran is talking about, and clearly he wasn't the one visiting Bran in those kind of dreams. Moreover, the 3-eyed crow has an attitude or personality that isn't similar to Bloodraven at all. When Bran has his first 3-eyed crow dream, listen to the crow's dialogue as Bran is falling to his death. A crow was spiraling down with him, just out of reach, following him as he fell. "Help me," he said. "I'm trying," the crow replied. "Say, got any corn?" Then later, Bran begs for help, and the crow says, "That won't do any good. I told you, the answer is flying, not crying. How hard can it be? I'm doing it." We can't really imagine the stoic, wizened, solemn Bloodraven saying this stuff to Bran when you compare it to the stuff Bloodraven says to Bran in the cave. "I saw your birth, and that of your Lord Father before you. I saw your first step, heard your first word, was part of your first dream. I was watching when you fell." They sound like 2 different people, which is what we think they are. Bloodraven can control ravens, while the 3-eyed crow can control crows. And what does Old Nan say about crows? Crows are all liars. Chapter 36. At the small council, Varys reports the mysterious murder of Renly Baratheon. The people present are more interested in the details of his death, but Varys' information changed dramatically depending on who provided the testimony. For some, Renly was murdered by knights of his own Rainbow Guard, or by Stannis Baratheon and his magic sword. For others, it was a woman, maybe a scorned lover, or a servant, or Lady Catelyn Stark at his presence to negotiate a peace between Renly and Robb. The only thing all his little birds agree on is that Renly is dead, and that Loras Tyrell, member of his Rainbow Guard, not only fled with 1/5 of Renly's knights, but, in his blind fury, murdered Aemon Key and Robar Royce of Renly's Kingsguard. Tyrion is annoyed at the fact that Loras only took out 2. Cersei is not pleased with the report, as the rumors are too vague and too much information is like no information at all, and they want the truth. Varys replies that the crown pays him well for his service, to which the Queen threatens that the small council may become smaller still. Peter Baelish is delighted at the idea of Varys being kicked out, but the back and forth between the two annoy Tyrion, who comments on Joffrey's disappointment about Renly's death. He was keeping a nice spike just for his head. He then states that it doesn't matter how it happened. Renly is dead indeed, and it must be Stannis' doing, because he's the one who has the most to gain from his brother's death, namely his endless army and bannermen. Many switch side, but not all. The Tyrells, the Tarlys, the Roans haven't. Sir Courtney Penrose refuses to yield Storm's End unless he sees Renly's body. Furthermore, not only Sir Loras has left with 1/5 of the knights, he's now headed to Bitterbridge, where his sister and the rest of House Tyrell forces await. Tyrion senses an opportunity in this chaotic situation. There is a chance here, it seems to me. Win Loras Tyrell to our cause, and Lord Mace Tyrell and his bannermen might join us as well. They may have sworn their swords to Stannis for the moment, yet they cannot love the man, or they would have been his from the start. Is their love for us any greater? asked Cersei. Scarcely, said Tyrion. They loved Renly, clearly. But Renly is slain. Perhaps we can give them good and sufficient reasons to prefer Joffrey to Stannis. if we move quickly. What sort of reasons do you mean to give them? Gold reasons? Littlefinger suggested at once. Varys notes that you can't bribe all of them, and Tyrion adds that they might buy some lesser house, but never Highgarden, the wealthiest house in the whole Seven Kingdoms, second only to the Lannisters. So he proposes to take inspiration from the late Renly Baratheon and forge the alliance through a marriage, despite his betrothal to Sansa Stark. Varys understood the quickest. You think to wed King Joffrey to Margaery Tyrell? I do. Renly's young queen was no more than 15, 16 he seemed to recall. Older than Joffrey, but a few years were nothing. It was so neat and sweet he could taste it. Joffrey is betrothed to Sansa Stark, Cersei objected. Marriage contracts can be broken. What advantage is there in wedding the king to the daughter of a dead traitor? Littlefinger spoke up. You might point out to his grace that Tyrells are much wealthier than the Starks, and that Margaery is said to be lovely and bettable besides. Yes, said Tyrion. Jeff ought to like that well enough. Cersei objects that the king is too young to think about these kinds of things, to which Tyrion replies that he was the same age when he married. Cersei dismisses the episode as a shame for the family and claims Joffrey to be made of finer stuff. So fine that he had Sir Boris rip off Sansa's gown. He was angry with the girl. He was angry with the cook's boy who spilled the soup last night as well, but he didn't strip him naked. This was not a matter of some spilled soup. No, it was a matter of some pretty teats. After that business in the yard, Tyrion had spoken with Varys about how they might arrange for Joffrey to visit Chataeus. A taste of honey might sweeten the boy, he hoped. He might even be grateful, gods forbid, and Tyrion could do with a shade more gratitude from his sovereign. It would need to be done secretly, of course. The show had this take place, whereas in the books, Tyrion never gets around to it, we don't think. The show does like hating Joffrey by having him, not Cersei, kill Robert's bastards. The debate about the new marriage proposal is heated. Cersei is hesitant to break the betrothal with Sansa, while Tyrion and Littlefinger push for Margaery Tyrell. Doubtless you know your son better than I do, he made himself tell Cersei. But regardless, there's still much to be said for a Tyrell marriage. It may be the only way that Joffrey lives long enough to reach his wedding night. Littlefinger agreed. The Stark girl brings Joffrey nothing but her body, sweet as that may be. Margaery Tyrell brings 50,000 swords and all the strength of Highgarden. Indeed. Varys laid a soft hand on the queen's sleeve. You have a mother's heart, and I know his grace loves his little sweetling. Yet, kings must learn to put the needs of the realm before their own desires. I say this offer must be made. The queen pulled free of the eunuch's touch. You would not speak so if you were a woman. Say what you will, my lords, but Joffrey is too proud to settle for Renly's leavings. He will never consent. Tyrion shrugged. When the king comes of age in 3 years, he may give or withhold his consent as he pleases. Until then, you are his regent, and I am his hand, and we will marry whomever we tell him to marry, leavings or no. Cersei's quiver was empty. Make your offer then. But God save you all if Joff does not like this girl. I'm so pleased we can agree, Tyrion said. Now, which of us shall go to Brittlebridge? We must reach Sir Loras with our offer before his blood can cool. They can't simply send someone who might just blindly repeat the council words without treating and mindlessly agreeing to a potential unbeneficial agreement. The envoy needs to be someone the crown can trust, and a person skilled in diplomacy. Cersei then candidates Tyrion, since, as Hand of the King, he speaks with his voice, and he's not lacking in wits. Then the imp rebukes with Cersei, who's the queen mother, and certainly knows her son better than anyone. This quarrel between siblings is interrupted by Littlefinger, who proposes himself as an ambassador on very reasonable grounds. Your grace, my lord Hand, said Littlefinger, the king needs both of you here. Let me go in your stead. You? What gain does he see in this? Tyrion wondered. I am the king's counsel, yet not the king's blood, so I would make a poor hostage. I knew Sir Loras passing well when he was here at court, and gave him no cause to mislike me. Mace Tyrell bears me no enmity that I know of, and I flatter myself that I am not unskilled in negotiation. He has us. Tyrion did not trust Petyr Baelish, nor did he want the man out of his sight. Yet what other choice was left of him? It must be Littlefinger or Tyrion himself, and he knew full well that if he left King's Landing for any length of time, all that he had managed to accomplish would be undone. Then they agree on 300 golden cloaks, 20 knights, and 20 squires as Littlefinger's escort. plus golden and fine horses to buy some of the lesser lords they've mentioned earlier. One of the Redwyne twins, Sir Hobar, will join the party to be returned to his father as a sign of goodwill, while the other, Sir Horace, will stay in King's Landing as a warning. Littlefinger demands a commission signed by all the small council member with their personal sigils that guarantees his right to speak for the crown, on which Tyrion agrees, and finally demands for a fair compensation after the deed is done. When the Queen annoyingly asks what it is that he wants, he smiles and simply replies that he still needs to think about it. Once the session is over, Cersei assumes a strangely welcoming attitude towards Tyrion, kissing him on the brow for the first time since they were children, and admitting that he was more than helpful and not the useless burden she actually thought he would be. With a little laughter, she also asks for Tyrion's forgiveness for her behavior, to which a surprised Tyrion replies there's nothing to be forgiven, but he does not buy it. Too astonished for words, Tyrion can only watch her stride off down the hall, Sir Preston at her side. "Have I lost my wits, or did my sister just kiss me?" he asked Bronn when she was gone. "Was it so sweet?" It was unanticipated. Cersei had been behaving queerly of late. Tyrion found it very unsettling. "I am trying to recall the last time she kissed me. I could not have been more than 6 or 7. Jaime had dared her to do it." "The woman's finally taken note of your charms." "No," Tyrion said. "No, the woman is hatching something. Best find out what, Bronn. You know I hate surprises." So, this chapter showcases how the real people that Littlefinger wanted to ally with were always the Tyrells and Renly. Since, like him, they are ambitious, upstarts with no claim to the Iron Throne, or even really Highgarden for that matter, but have the drive and determination to seize what they want. Renly probably was Littlefinger's ideal partner along with the Tyrells, which is why he was so keen to be the envoy and bring them in to the Lannister regime. In Chapter 37, Benfred Talhart, sent to deal with the Ironborn pillaging the coasts of the north, has found out that they're following the lead of Theon Greyjoy. He calls him a traitor for that, spitting on his cheek when questioned by Theon himself. The act of spitting is seen as an insult by Aeron Damphier, who declares that spitting on one Ironborn is to spit on all of them. Therefore, Benfred Talhart must die, and die the old way. Even if in his thoughts, Theon finds the practice of sacrificing enemies to the drowned god appalling, he cannot afford to go against his uncle, who not only is the interpreter of the drowned god's voice, but is also his father's eyes, sent to spy on him and check on his doing. When his men take away Benfred, Theon tries to convince himself that to be drowned is a kindness, since Stig is not really an expert headsman and Benfred's neck is thick with muscles and fat. Theon distantly remembers making fun of him for that, when, a few years prior, he spent a fortnight in his company with Robb and Eddard Stark, which makes him feel even worse. His men are celebrating, but this victory leaves a sour taste in Theon's mouth, since what just happened resembles more of a slaughter than a real battle. Talhart hadn't even sent out a scout. The Ironborn are knelt on the men they slayed, seeking out their bodies to take their jewelry and pay the iron price. Theon lingers on the thought of doing the same, but then his mind goes to Eddard Stark, to what he might have thought of that, which makes him even angrier. Stark is dead and rotting, and naught to me. One of his men, Todrick, is even drunk, contrasting his direct orders, which brings him to act. Old Botley, who was called Fish Whiskers, sat scowling by his pile of plunder, while his 3 sons added to it. One of them was in a shoving match with a fat man named Todrick, who was reeling among the slain with a horn of ale in one hand and an axe in the other, clad in a cloak of white fox fur only slightly stained by the blood of its previous owner. Drunk, Theon decided, watching him bellow. It was said that the Iron Men of old had oft been blood drunk in battle, so berserk that they felt no pain and feared no foe, but this was a common ale drunk. "Wex, my bow and quiver." The boy ran and fetched them. Theon bent the bow and slipped the string into its notches as Todrick knocked down the Botley boy and flung ale into his eyes. Fish Whiskers leapt up, cursing, but Theon was quicker. He drew on the hand that clutched the drinking horn, figuring to give them a shot to talk about, but Todrick spoiled it by lurching to one side just as he loosed. The arrow took him through the belly. The looters stopped to gape, Theon lowered his bow. "No drunkards," I said, "and no squabbles over plunder." On his knees, Todrick was dying noisily. Botley, silence him. Fish Whiskers and his sons were quick to obey. They slit Todrick's throat as he kicked feebly, and were stripping him of cloak and rings and weapons before he was even dead. Now they know I mean what I say. Lord Balon might have given him the command, but Theon knew that some of his men saw only a soft boy from the Greenlands when they looked at him. "Anyone else have a thirst?" No one replied. Good. He kicked at Benfrin's fallen banner, clutched in the dead hand of the squire who'd borne it. A rabbit skin had been tied below the flag. Why rabbit skins? He had meant to ask. But being spat on had made him forget his questions. He tossed his bow back to Wex and strode off, remembering how elated he'd felt after the Whispering Wood and wondering why this did not taste as sweet. Talhart, you bloody overproud fool. You never even sent out a scout. He then thinks about how they ended up here, how prepared he was to meet his opponent, and then how unprepared he was at the fact that his enemy would be Benfrid Talhart, a man he knew and shared meals with. Talhart's limp and swollen body is being lifted on the sea bitch, his ship docked on a now empty village. All the men but a handful have been executed. The ones allowed to leave would spread the word of their coming in Torrhen Square, and the women have been claimed for salt wives, save for the old and the ugly ones. The ones with any kind of skill and seemed unlikely to cause trouble are taken for thralls. None of it is of his liking, probably because of his Greenland's upbringing, the same upbringing that the Ironborn frown upon, and the reason why they don't really recognize Theon as their commander. That is why his Lord Father had commanded Asha to take a castle with her own ship. He is really resentful to be second to his sister, especially if bards are going to sing of her and forget about him, but only if he allows it. He then approaches Dagmere Cleftjaw, who had raised him as a child and taught him how to use a sword before Eddard Stark took him as a hostage. Theon calls him uncle, even if they're not really related. Dagmere Cleftjaw stood by the high-carved prow of his longship, Foam Drinker. Theon had assigned him the task of guarding the ships, otherwise men would have called it Dagmere's victory, not his. A more prickly man might have taken that for a slight, but the Cleftjaw had only laughed. "The day is won," Dagmere called down, "and yet you do not smile, boy. The living should smile, for the dead cannot." He smiled himself to show how it was done. It made for a hideous sight. Under a snowy white mane of a hair, Dagmere Cleftjaw had the most gut-churning scar Theon had ever seen, the legacy of the long axe that had near killed him as a boy. The blow had splintered his jaw, shattered his front teeth, and left him 4 lips where other men had but 2. A shaggy beard covered his cheeks and neck, but the hair would not grow over the scar, so a shiny seam of puked, twisted flesh divided his face like a crevice through a snowfield. "We could hear them singing," the old warrior said. "It was a good song, and they sang it bravely. They sang better than they fought. Harps would have done them as much good as their lances did. How many men are lost?" "Of ours?" Theon shrugged. "Todrick. I killed him for getting drunk and fighting over loot." "Some men are born to be killed." A lesser man might have been afraid to show a smile as frightening as his, yet Dagmere grinned more often and more broadly than Lord Balon ever had. Theon knows he needs him for his plan to succeed, so he follows him on his ship. Every captain is a king on his ship. Therefore, the formalities of rank are forgotten here, and men speak more truthfully. Theon cannot proceed with his plan without Dagmere's support, especially since he cannot win his uncle, and he needs at least one of them on his side to bring his scheme to life. "Your Lord Father commanded us to harry the coast, no more." Eyes pale as sea foam watched Theon from under those shaggy white eyebrows. Was it disapproval he saw there, or a spark of interest? The latter, he thought. Hoped. "You are my father's man, his best man, and always have been." Pride, Theon thought. He is proud. I must use that. His pride will be the key. There is no man in the Iron Islands half so skilled with a spear or sword. "You have been away too long, boy. When you left, it was as you say. But I am grown old in Lord Greyjoy's service. The singers call Andric best now. Andric the Unsmiling, they name him. A giant of a man. He serves Lord Drum of Old Wick, and Black Lauren and Carl the Maid are near as dread. This Andric may be a great fighter, but men do not fear him as they fear you. Aye, that's so, Dagmir said. The fingers curled around the drinking horn were heavy with rings, gold and silver and bronze, set with chunks of sapphire and garnet and dragonglass. He had paid the iron price for every one, Theon knew. If I had a man like you in my service, I should not waste him on this child's business of harrying and burning. There is no work for Lord Balon's best man. Dagmir's grin twisted his lips apart and showed the brown splinters of his teeth. Nor for his true-born son? He hooted. I know you too well, Theon. I saw you take your first step, helped you bend your first bow. It's not me who feels wasted. Theon admits his bitterness over his father's clear favoritism towards Asha, to which Dagmir replies not to worry too much about it. It is only so because all of Balon's sons had been taken away from him that his only daughter became his solace, which makes Theon even more adamant in his purpose. He explains that he means to win a great deed to prove himself the true heir of Balon Greyjoy and hand a new kingdom to his father. What would my part be in this scheme of yours, boy? Dagmir Cleftjaw asked after a long silence, and Theon knew he had won, to strike terror into the heart of the foe, as only one of your name could do. You'll take the great part of our force and march on Torrhen Square. Helman Talhart took his best men south, and Benfred died here with their sons. His uncle Leopold will remain, with some small garrison. If I had to be able to question Benfred, I would know just how small. Make no secret of your approach. Sing all the brave songs you like. I want them to close their gates. Is this Torrhen Square or a strong keep? Strong enough. The walls are stone, 30 feet high, with square towers at each corner and a square keep within. Stone walls cannot be fired. How are we to take them? We do not have the numbers to storm even a small castle. You will make camp outside their walls and set to building catapults and siege engines. That is not the old way. Have you forgotten? Iron men fight with swords and axes, not by flinging rocks. There is no glory in starving out a foeman. Leopold will not know that. When he sees you raising siege towers, his old woman's blood will run cold, and he will bleat for help. Stay your archers, uncle, and let the raven fly. The castellan at Winterfell is a brave man, but age has stiffened his wits as well as his limbs. When he learns that one of his king's bannermen is under attack by the fearsome Dagmir Cleftjaw, he will summon his strength and ride to Talhart's aid. It is his duty. Sir Rodrik is nothing if not dutiful. Any force he summons will be larger than mine, Dagmir said, and these old knights are more cunning than you think, or they would never have lived to see their first grey hair. You set us a battle we cannot hope to win, Theon. This Torrhen Square will never fall. Theon smiled. It's not Torrhen Square I mean to take. What a great song would bards make of that. So, for this analysis, I would like to talk about Jon 4 and Theon 3 as example of characters in A Song of Ice and Fire being manipulated by potentially Bloodraven or a future Bran. So, we know Bloodraven wants Bran to come north, but Bran is a cripple and safe in Winterfell. So why would Bran take such a perilous journey? Well, first you send Jojen and Mira to guide him under the false pretense that if he goes, Bran will one day be able to walk. Jojen seems to have all the answers Bran wants, and Bran is also smitten with Mira. Next, send Theon dreams that inspire him to take Winterfell, an absolutely stupid decision since he can't possibly hold it. But this is what forces Bran to leave Winterfell. But how to get past the wall? Well, that's where Jorah Mormont's plan to station the Night's Watch at the Fist of the First Men is so critical. By positioning himself here, the wildlings or White Walkers have no choice but to attack them, and this would allow Bran to get through the wall, since Samwell will be separated with Gilly's baby and brought to the Black Gate by Cold Hands. Now, if you think this is far too convoluted and unrealistic, please watch Preston Jacobs' Night Watch, The War of the Raven, Part 4, and it shows that Mormont's Raven was influencing the Old Bear, which is probably being controlled by Bloodraven, and this same Raven is the one that gets Jon elected Lord Commander in A Storm of Swords. Chapter 38. Harrenhal Castle is in turmoil for Tywin Lannister's imminent departure. Men stood on the beds of wagons loading casks of wine, sacks of flour, and bundles of new fletched arrows. Smiths straightened swords, knocked dents from breastplates, and shoed destriers and pack mules alike. Mail shirts were tossed in barrels of sand and rolled across the lumpy surface of the flowstone yard to scour them clean. Weeze's women had 20 cloaks to mend, 100 more to wash. The high and humble crowded into the sept together to pray. Outside the walls, tents and pavilions were coming down. Squires tossed pails of water over cookfires, while soldiers took out their oil stones to give their blades one last good lick. The noise was a swelling tide, horses blowing and whickering, lords shouting commands, men-at-arms trading curses, camp followers squabbling. The first one to march, and to make a great show of it, is Sir Adam Marbrand, an ecorsier of the same copper colour of his hair. The servants of the castle whisper that he is Lord Tywin's best swordsman and most valiant knight, all of which makes Arya ferociously wish for the death of the knight and of all of his men, who are set to fight against Robb. At Harrenhal, they don't really know what happened in the west. Some say that Robb conquered Castle Rock, some that he burnt Lannisport to the ground, others that he was besieging the Golden Tooth. But one thing is for sure, a great victory has been won by the North. Arya's duties in the castle include sending messages that bring her even beyond the wall of the fortress, giving her possibilities to escape. Unfortunately, she's too scared of Weeze to do so, because his threats do not include beating or sexual violence. They aim to do something so much worse. Whoever is going to be caught trying to escape will be left to the hands of Vhagar Hoat, who was renewed as the Crippler. Fearing to have her extremities cut off, Arya wishes for Weeze's death, so that she might try to escape. But she only does so when he's not around, because he claims to be able to smell what you're thinking, a terrible perspective for the Stark girl in incognito. The good thing about delivering messages is that Weeze doesn't even imagine that she can read, so he doesn't even bother to seal the letters that he gives to Arya, known in Harrenhal as Weasel. So Arya gets to peek at them. Even if they're for the most part boring and unimportant, like now, he has sent her to a squire who owes Weeze a gambling debt, as written in the message. The squire doesn't know how to read, so Arya tells him what the message is about, enraging the squire. She manages to get away thanks to her agility, and even steal a silver cup that she later brings to Weeze as payment. This earns her a promise from the man. They'd share supper that night. What really occupies Arya's mind, though, is to find again Jaqen H'ghar to whisper another name to take before all those she hates will end up beyond their reach. The Hound, Raff, Dunsen, and Polliver. And Tywin Lannister, of course. The afternoon she is set to find Jaqen to whisper a new name. Weeze commands her to go to the armory to tell Lucan that Sir Lionel needs a new sword. When she enters, half of the forgers are at work, and among the busy smith, she finds Gendry. His bare chest is slick with sweat, but his blue eyes have the same stubborn look that she remembered, and Arya is surprised in realizing that after all that happened, she still wishes to talk to him. So she gets close, and with the excuse of finding Lucan, she speaks to him. "Which one is Lucan?" She thrusts out the paper. "I'm to get a new sword for Sir Lionel." "Never mind about Sir Lionel." He drew her aside by the arm. "Last night, Hot Pie asked me if I heard you yell Winterfell back at the Holdfast when we were all fighting on the wall." "I never did." "Yes, you did. I heard you too." "Everyone was yelling stuff," Arya said defensively. "Hot Pie yelled Hot Pie. He must have yelled it 100 times. It's what you yelled that matters. I told Hot Pie he should clean the wax out of his ears, that all you yelled was go to hell. If he asks you, you better say the same." "I will," she said, even though she thought go to hell was a stupid thing to yell. She didn't dare tell Hot Pie who she really was. Maybe I should say Hot Pie's name to Jaqen. "I'll get Lucan," Gendry said. Lucan grunted at the writing, though Arya did not think he could read it, and pulled down a heavy longsword. "This is too good for that oaf, and you tell him I said so," he said as he gave her the blade. "I will," she lied. If she did any such thing, Weeze would beat her bloody. Lucan could deliver his own insults. Holding the longswords bring back memories of Needle, even if this sword is much heavier than hers. She could use it even if she's not a water dancer yet, because she's not a mouse either. She suddenly realizes that the gates are open, the stable boys can't read, and she can pretend to be in need of a horse for Sir Lionel and simply run away. Her thoughts linger on a plan to escape. But if they catch her, Whis will give her to Vargo Hoat, and he'll cut her feet. Luckily, a group of archers passes by, and she overhears their conversation. "Giants, I tell you. He's got giants 20 foot tall, come down from beyond the wall. Follow him like dogs. Not natural, coming on them so fast, in the night and all. He's more wolf than man, all them Starks are. Get on your wolves and giants. The boy'd piss his pants if he knew he was coming. He wasn't man enough to march on Harrenhal, was he? Ran the other way, didn't he? He'd run now if he knew what was best for him. So you say, but might be the boy knows something we don't. Maybe it's us ought to be run." Yes, Arya thought. Yes, it's you who ought to run. You and Lord Tywin, and the Mountain, and Sir Adam, and Sir Armory, and stupid Sir Lionel, whoever he is. All of you better run, or my brother will kill you. He's a Stark. He's more wolf than man, and so am I. Her Stark identity is strong inside of her. Whis catches her and slaps her with the back of his hand because she's been too slow. Humiliation made her realize that thinking about Robb has made a wolf of her again, if only for 1 second. But that slap has taken it away from her, leaving only fear and rage. He sends her with another message, and she better run if she wants to have dinner that night. He also threatens to slap her again if he catches her looking at him with that insolent look in her eyes again. This seals his destiny. He will not hit her. He will never hit anyone again. Arya has made up her mind about the second name to deliver to Jaqen. The girl finds him after an unfortunate encounter with Rorge, who threatens to her and makes fun of her for not being that brave now that he's not in chains anymore. The man is scared of Jaqen, so he reveals her his whereabouts and leaves. Jaqen is in the bathhouse and hears her approaching, even though Arya tried to be quiet as possible. She crept up quiet as a shadow, but he opened his eyes all the same. She steals in on little mice feet, but a man hears, he said. How could he hear me, she wondered, and it seemed as if he heard that as well. The scuff of leather on stone sings loud as war horns to a man with open ears. Clever girls go barefoot. I have a message. Arya eyed the serving girl uncertainly. When she did not seem likely to go away, she leaned in until her mouth was almost touching his ear. Whis, she whispered. She then leaves and delivers Wys's original message about Lord Tywin's wine barrels to Tuffleberry. The man cannot have his lads deliver the barrels, so in the end, Wys has to use 6 of his men to complete the task instead of using Tuffleberry's sons as he intended to. At supper time, Wys calls for Arya, leading her to mistakenly think that he remembers about the promise to share dinner with her, which makes her feel bad for calling for his death. I saw you looking at me. Wys wiped his finger on the front of her shift. Then he grabbed her throat with one hand and slapped her with the other. What did I tell you? He slapped her again. Backhand. Keep those eyes to yourself, or next time I'll spoon one out and feed it to my... A shove sent her stumbling to the floor. Her hem caught on a loose nail in the splintered wooden bench and ripped as she fell. You'll mend that before you sleep, Wys announced as he pulled the last bit of meat off the capon. When he was finished, he sucked his fingers noisily and threw the bones to his ugly spotted dog. Wys is the first name in the list that night. She wondered for how long he'll be included on the list and falls asleep dreaming of the morning after, hoping he'll be dead by then. His boots wake her, though, as always. He assures her that now that Lord Tywin is going to go, her duties aren't going to be any lighter. If anything, there are just going to be less people to fence for the enormous castle, so she better put herself at work. That day, Lord Tywin Lannister and all his remaining forces leave Harrenhal to fight off Robb, and Arya realizes that she should have whispered to Jaqen his name, or the name of someone who really mattered, not Wys and Chiswick. She has whispered names of no one. A shiver crept up Arya's spine as she watched them pass under the great iron portcullis of Harrenhal. Suddenly, she knew that she had made a terrible mistake. I'm so stupid, she thought. Wys did not matter, no more than Chiswick had. These were the men who mattered, the ones she ought to have killed. Last night, she could have whispered any of them, dead, if only she hadn't been so mad at Wys for hitting her and lying about the capon. Lord Tywin, why didn't I say Lord Tywin? Perhaps it was not too late to change her mind. Wys was not killed yet. If she could just find Jaqen, tell him. Hurriedly, Arya ran down the twisting steps, her chores forgotten. She heard the rattle of chains as the portcullis was slowly lowered, its spike sinking deeper into the ground. And then another sound, a shriek of pain and fear. Wys's body lays under his dogs, who's chewing off entire pieces of his face. Someone shoos at the dogs. Arya lifted her gaze from the dead man and his dead dog. Jaqen H'ghar was leaning up against the side of the Wailing Tower. When he saw her looking, he lifted a hand to his face and laid 2 fingers casually against his cheek. Only one name left. So, Arya is 100% right. She should have named Tywin Lannister, and this is probably what would have prevented a Tyrell-Lannister alliance, since the chaos wouldn't have allowed them to reach King's Landing in time to stop Stannis. Although, maybe Kevan could have stepped up and taken his brother's command, and as we know, he is very capable and could have led House Lannister's forces and won the Battle of the Blackwater. So, maybe it would have changed nothing. It is also a mystery why Rorge and Baita obey and seemingly follow Jaqen. Also, why were they able to go from prisoners to soldiers in Tywin's army so quickly? We also see Adam Marbrand in this chapter, who is honestly the coolest and nicest guy in the Lannister regime. Chapter 40. Seated in a palanquin in the company of Zarozon Daxus, the Mother of Dragons can barely control the disappointment she feels. The Pureborn had refused her ships and soldiers, and only accepted to hear her pleads to see the wonder of the world, her dragons. The Qartheen merchant hints at the reason of her sadness, calling it the loss of a dream. But Daenerys firmly replies that the dream is not dead, only delayed. Yet her heart does not feel as sure as her voice. Dressing in the fashion of Qarth did not help her, nor did the amethyst necklace that Zara gifted her. A collar capable of protecting her from any kind of poison. The Pureborn are said to slip poison in wine cups, but the only thing they offered her was water. Descendants of the ancient kings and queens of Qarth, the Pureborn commanded the civic guard and the fleet of ornate galleys that ruled the straits between the seas. Daenerys Targaryen had wanted that fleet, or part of it, and some of their soldiers as well. She made the traditional sacrifice in the Temple of Memory, offered the traditional bribe to the keeper of the long list, sent the traditional permission to the opener of the door, and finally received the traditional blue silk slippers summoning her to the Hall of 1,000 Thrones. The Pureborn heard her pleas from the great wooden seats of their ancestors, rising in curved tiers from a marble floor to a high-domed ceiling painted with scenes of Qarth's 305 vanished glory. The chairs were immense, fantastically carved, bright with goldwork and studded with amber, onyx, lapis, and jade, each one different from all the others, and each striving to be the most fabulous. Yet the men who sat in them seemed so listless and world-weary that they might have been asleep. They listened, but they did not hear, or care, she thought. They are milkmen indeed. They never meant to help me. They came because they were curious. They came because they were bored, and the dragon on my shoulder interested them more than I did. Tell me the words of the Pureborn, prompted Zarozon Daxos. Tell me what they said to sadden the queen of my heart. They said no. The wine tasted of pomegranates and hot summer days. They said it with great courtesy, to be sure, but under all the lovely words, it was still no. Did you flatter them? Shamelessly. Did you weep? The blood of the dragon does not weep, she said testily. Zaro sighed. You ought to have wept. The Qartheen wept often and easily. It was considered a mark of the civilized man. The men we bought, what did they say? Mathos said nothing. Wenderlo praised the way I spoke. The exquisite refused me with the rest, but he wept afterward. Alas, that Qartheen should be so faithless. Zaro was not himself of the Pureborn, but he had told her whom to bribe and how much to offer. Weep. Weep for the treachery of men. Daenerys realizes that she might have a crown, but she is a beggar all the same, just like her brother Viserys had been. To have an audience with the Pureborn was a terribly costly affair. The only way she could afford to bribe some of them and perform all of the expensive rituals was thanks to Zaro's generosity and quick wits. When the word that living dragons inhabited this world once more spread, he made sure that the wealthy and the humble offer a token to the Mother of Dragons, and gifts and wealth flooded Daenerys. Of all the gifts received, lace from Mia, spices from Yi Tai, amber, dragonglass from Ashai, and more, Dany only kept the crown from the Tourmaline Brotherhood, a 3-headed crown fashioned in gold and silver, the heads in jade, ivory, and onyx. The reason why she kept this token is to avoid the fate that doomed her brother Viserys to madness. Once he sold their mother's crown to feed them, all joy and hope was lost in him, replaced by bitterness and sorrow. Dany knows that if she allows it, the same will happen to her. But she also knows that the greatest difference between her and her brother is that she has dragons, and therefore giving up is not an option. She tries to convince the merchant once more, but he stubbornly refuses her, asking once again her hand in marriage. I have no warships. War is bad for trade. Many times I have told you, Xaros Ondaxis is a man of peace. Xaros Ondaxis is a man of gold, she thought, and gold will buy me all the ships and swords I need. I have not asked you to take up a sword, only to lend me your ships. He smiled modestly. Of trading ships, I have a few, that is so. Who can say how many? One may be sinking even now, in some stormy corner of the summer sea. On the morrow, another will fall afoul of corsairs. The next day, one of my captains may look at the wealth in his hold and think, all this should belong to me. Such are the perils of trade. Why, the longer we talk, the fewer ships I am likely to have. I grow poorer by the instant. Give me the ships, and I will make you rich again. Marry me, bright light, and sail the ship of my heart. I cannot sleep at night for thinking of your beauty. Dany smiled. Xaro's flowery protestations of passion amused her, but his manner was at odds with his words. While Ser Jorah had scarcely been able to keep his eyes from her bare chest when he'd helped her into the palanquin, Xaro hardly deigned to notice it, even in these closed confines, and she had seen the beautiful boys who surrounded the merchant prince, flitting through his palace halls in wisps of silk. You speak sweetly, Xaro, but under your words I hear another no. This vain exchange is interrupted by a sudden halt of the palanquin. A fire mage is performing in front of a crowd, and Dany too wants to see. The fire mage had conjured a ladder in the air, a crackling orange ladder of swirling flame that rose unsupported from the floor of the brazier. When the fiery ladder stood 40 feet high, the mage leapt forward and began to climb it, scrambling up hand over hand as quick as a monkey. When he reached the top, the ladder was gone, and so was he. A fine trick, announced Drogo with admiration. No trick, a woman said in the common tongue. It's Quaithe, his face still mysteriously hidden under the red Lacroix mask. Daenerys inquires her about what she just said, to which the Shadowbender explains to her that what the mage just did was magic indeed, but not thanks to his skills, rather to the hatching of the dragon eggs. Half a year gone, that man could scarcely wake fire from dragonglass. He had some small skill with powders and wildfire, sufficient to entrance a crowd while his cut-purses did their work. He could walk across hot coals and make burning roses bloom in the air, but he could no more aspire to climb the fiery ladder that a common fisherman could hope to catch a kraken in his nets. Dany looked up uneasily at where the ladder had stood. Even the smoke was gone now, and the crowd was breaking up, each man going about his business. In a moment, more than a few would find their purses flat and empty. And now his power grow, Khaleesi, and you are the cause of it. Me? She laughed. How could that be? The woman stepped closer and laid 2 fingers on Dany's wrist. You are the mother of dragons, are you not? She then warns Daenerys to flee the city as soon as possible, for she fears she might never be permitted to leave it all if she won't go. Where would you have me go? She asked. To go north, you must journey south. To reach the west, you must go east. To go forward, you must go back. And to touch the light, you must pass beneath the shadow. Asshai, Dany thought. She would have me go to Asshai. Will the Asshai give me an army? She demanded. Will there be gold for me in Asshai? Will there be ships? What is there in Asshai that I will not find in Qarth? Truth, said the woman in the mask. And bowing, she faded back into the crowd. Both Ricardo and Aggo suggest her to forget Quaithe's words, because it is known that the word of priests who do not show their face to the sun is not to be trusted. Xaro agrees with them and regards them as wiser than they seem. Once in the peace of her chambers, Dany calls for Jorah, whose counsel she now needs more than ever. Her dragons are growing, but it will take time for them to be ready for war, and they'll need training too, otherwise they'd lay the Seven Kingdom to waste. Jorah reveals to Daenerys why Xaro keeps on proposing a marriage to her. On their wedding day, bride and groom ask each other a token of love. Whatever they desire that the other owns, they must give to their spouse. Xaro would clearly rule over Qarth with 1 dragon, but 1 ship would not do much for Daenerys' cause. They discuss where to go. Jorah is completely against Asshai, and even more to go back to Pentos, to Magister Illyroy, who, he reminds her, sold her as a child bride to Khal Drogo. Although reluctantly, Daenerys must admit that Jorah is right. She asks whether she should just invade the Seven Kingdoms with a sellsword army, to which Jorah replies that nothing binds a kingdom together more than a foreign army on its soil. "I am their rightful queen," Dany protested. "You are a stranger who means to land on their shores with an army of outlanders who cannot even speak the common tongue. The lords of Westeros do not know you, and have every reason to fear and mistrust you. You must win them over before you sail, a few at least. And how am I to do that, if I go east as you counsel?" He ate an olive and spit out the pit into his palm. "I do not know, your grace," he admitted, "but I do know that the longer you remain in one place, the easier it will be for your enemies to find you. The name Targaryen still frightens them, so much so that they sent a man to murder you when they heard you were with child. What will they do when they learn of your dragons?" Daenerys refuses to think about the harm that will come to her children if she does not act. When she once again asks Jorah what can she do, the knight simply says, "Go to Pyat Pree." So, we are of the opinion that it is not the return of dragons that is sparking the return of magic, but the Red Comet, which we believe was a Vulcan, if you are not at all familiar with George R.R. Martin's other work. This is what is allowing magic to return to the world of Westeros, not Daenerys. Now, with the prophecy Quaithe gives Daenerys, it can be interpreted a lot of ways. For example, it might mean that Daenerys has to return to Vaes Dothrak, go to Asshai, or even Dany will circumnavigate the globe to attack Westeros from the west at like Castle Rock, with Tyrion telling her how to take the castle. However, with a lot of these ideas, there just isn't time for George to do them, which is a shame and would have been awesome to see. Chapter 41. It is the day of Marcella's departure for Dorne. Tyrion and the entire royal family are gathered to say goodbye to the princess, who is to marry Prince Trystane Martell to secure an alliance with Dorne. Tyrion notes that the princess faces the situation with bravery and dignity, saying all the proper words and even consoling her own little brother, Prince Tommen, who cries for her departure. Tyrion thinks that it's because she is a Lannister, in spite of her Baratheon's name, and Jaime's child as much as Cersei's. The plan to lead the princess safely to Dorne makes the imp uncomfortable for a number of reasons. It hardly follows the faster route, which Tyrion hopes to be the safest at least, stretching all the way to Braavos in order to avoid Dragonstone, and if the plan fails, the Dornish alliance will be lost. Moreover, to properly escort the princess, Tyrion had to part a great number of ships from their already inadequate fleet, leaving the city even more exposed than it already is to Stannis Baratheon, who is in possession of the vast majority of the ships that formed the royal fleet, now in Dragonstone. He cleared his throat. "You know your orders, Captain?" "I do, my lord. We are to follow the coast, staying away in sight of land, until we reach Cracklaw Point. From there, we are to strike out across the narrow sea for Braavos. On no account are we to sail within sight of Dragonstone. And if our foes should chance upon you nonetheless, if a single ship, we are to run them off or destroy them. If there are more, the bold wind will cleave to the Sea Swift to protect her, while the rest of the fleet does battle." Tyrion nodded. If the worst happened, the little Sea Swift ought to be able to outrun pursuit. A small ship with big sails, she was faster than any warship afloat. Or so her captain had claimed. Once Marcella reached Braavos, she ought to be safe. He was sending Sir Aerys Oakheart as her sworn shield, and had engaged the Braavosi to bring her the rest of the way to Sunspear. Even Lord Stannis would hesitate to wake the anger of the greatest and most powerful of the free cities. Travelling from King's Landing to Dorne by way of Braavos was scarcely the most direct of routes, but it was the safest, or so he hoped. If Lord Stannis knew of this sailing, he could not choose a better time to send his fleet against us. Even now, men are working on his winch tower, completed for 3 quarters. With them working at that fast-paced tempo, Tyrion thinks he needs only another fortnight to be ready to face Stannis. The High Septon is taking a large amount of time to bless the princess for a voyage, bothering Tyrion, who reflects on the contrast between the fatness of the old man and the level of hunger that the city is suffering. He can feel the unkind eyes of the crowd on them, resentful because the nobility is well fed and they are starving instead. Cersei seems completely unaware or uncaring of the mood of the crowd, preferring to show a bright smile and a laugh at some of Lancel Lannister's jokes. Tyrion knows of their relationship and knows everything about Cersei's plots, since Lancel is now Tyrion's man and reports everything to him. This includes Cersei's intentions of taking to service a hedge knight named Sir Osmond Kettleback and his brothers Sir Osfred and Sir Osney to buy her own force of sellswords. He is not bothered by that, because she doesn't know that they too are his men, for he matches anything she paid them, coin for coin, through Bronn. When the ships finally leave the harbour and Princess Marcella's journey begins, Tyrion witnesses once again Joffrey threatening to harm Sansa and wonders whether Cersei really is that blind to her son's cruel behaviour. The imp is worried about many things: his nephew's attitude, his niece's journey, Stannis' fleet, Littlefinger's silence. Tyrion had chosen the ships with care, avoiding any whose captains might be of doubtful loyalty, according to Varys. But as Varys himself was of doubtful loyalty, a certain amount of apprehension remained. I rely too much on Varys, he reflected. I need my own informers. Not that I trust them either. Trust would get you killed. He wondered again about Littlefinger. There had been no word from Peter Baelish since he had ridden off for Bitterbridge. That might mean nothing, or everything. Even Varys could not say. The eunuch had suggested that perhaps Littlefinger had met some misfortune on the roads. He might even be slain. Tyrion had snorted in derision. If Littlefinger is dead, then I'm a giant. More likely, the Tyrells were balking at the proposed marriage. Tyrion could scarcely blame them. If I were Mace Tyrell, I would sooner have Joffrey's head on a pike than his in my daughter. The party heads back to the Red Keep, under the hostile look of the starving crowd. Tyrion knows that Bronn has sellswords scattered through the crowd to keep the situation under control, but he doesn't know if there is a way to do it once the fire is lit. Some people scream Joffrey's name at their passage, but for every man that cheers, 100 stay silent. The situation escalates when a woman runs out in the street right in front of the King's Way. She has a terrifying empty look in her face and holds the corpse of her baby up above her head. It was blue and swollen, grotesque, but the real horror was the mother's eyes. Joffrey looked for a moment as if he meant to write her down, but Sansa Stark leaned over and said something to him. The king fumbled in his purse and flung the woman a silver stag. The coin bounced off the child and rolled away under the legs of the gold cloaks and into the crowd, where a dozen men began to fight for it. The mother never once blinked. Her skinny arms were trembling from the dead weight of her son. "Leave her, your grace," Cersei called out to the king. "She's beyond our help, poor thing." The mother heard her. Somehow the queen's voice cut through the woman's ravaged wits. Her slack face twisted in loathing. "Whore!" she shrieked. "Kingslayer's whore! Brother effer!" Her dead child dropped from her arms like a sack of flour as she pointed at Cersei. "Brother effer! Brother effer! Brother effer!" Then someone threw dung at Joffrey, letting the inevitable riot begin. Tyrion never saw who threw the dung. He only heard Sansa's gasp and Joffrey's bellowed curse. And when he turned his head, the king was wiping brown filth from his cheek. There was more caked in his golden hair and spattered over Sansa's legs. "Who threw that?" Joffrey screamed. He pushed his fingers into his hair, made a furious face, and flung away another handful of dung. "I want the man who threw that," he shouted. 100 golden dragons to the man who gives him up." "He was up here," someone shouted from the crowd. The king wheeled his horse in a circle to survey the rooftops and open balconies above them. In the crowd, people were pointing, shoving, cursing one another and the king. "Please, your grace, let him go," Sansa pleaded. The king paid her no heed. "Bring me the man who flung that filth," Joffrey commanded. "He'll lick it off me or I'll have his head. Dog, you bring him here." Obedient, Sandor Clegane swung down from his saddle, but there was no way through that wall of flesh, let alone to the roof. Those closest to him began to squirm and shove to get away, while others pushed forward to see. Tyrion smelled disaster. "Clegane, leave off. The man is long fled." "I want him," Joffrey pointed at the roof. "He was up there. Dog, cut through them and bring—" A turmoil of sound drowned his last words. A rolling thunder of rage and fear and hatred that engulfed them from all sides. "Bastard!" someone screamed at Joffrey. "Bastard monster!" Others flung calls of whore and brother effer at the queen. while Tyrion had pelted with shouts of freak and half-man. Mixed in with the abuse, he heard a few cries of justice and Robb, King Robb, the young wolf, of Stannis and even Renly. From both sides of the street, the crowd surged against the spear shafts while the Goldcloaks struggled to hold the line. Stones and dung and fouler things whistled overhead. "Feed us!" a woman shrieked. "Bread!" boomed a man behind her. "We want bread, bastard!" In a heartbeat, 1,000 voices took up the chant. King Joffrey and King Robb and King Stannis were forgotten, and King Bread ruled alone. "Bread!" they clamored. "Bread! Bread!" Tyrion spurred to his sister's side, yelling, "Back to the castle, now!" They try to escape, but the starving crowd is mad with hunger and rage and desperation and seriously threatens everyone's life. The king was wheeling his palfrey around in anxious circles while hands reached past the line of Goldcloaks grasping for him. One managed to get hold of his leg, but only for an instant. So Mandon's sword slashed down, parting hand from wrist. "Ride!" Tyrion shouted at his nephew, giving the horse a sharp smack on the rump. The animal reared, trumpeting, and plunged ahead. The press shattered before him. Tyrion drove into the gap hard on the king's hooves. Bronn kept pace, sword in hand. A jagged rock flew past his head as he rode, and a rotten cabbage exploded against Sir Mandon's shield. To their left, 3 Goldcloaks went down under the surge, and then the crowd was rushing forward, trampling the fallen men. The hound had vanished behind, though his riderless horse galloped beside them. Tyrion saw Aron Santagar pulled from the saddle, the gold and black Baratheon stag torn from his grasp. Sir Balon Swan dropped the Lannister lion to draw his longsword. He slashed right and left as the fallen banner was ripped apart, the 1,000 ragged pieces swirling away like crimson leaves in a storm wind. In an instant, they were gone. Someone staggered in front of Joffrey's horse and shrieked as the king rode him down. Whether it had been man, woman, or child, Tyrion could not have said. Joffrey was galloping at his side, whey-faced, with Sir Mandon Moore a white shadow on his left. And suddenly, the madness was behind, and they were clattering across the cobbled square that fronted on the castle barbican. A line of spearmen held the gates. Sir Jacelyn was wheeling his lances around for another charge. The spears parted to let the king's party pass under the portcullis. Pale red walls loomed up about them, reassuringly high and abswarm with crossbowmen. Tyrion did not recall dismounting. He is in total shock and disbelief at Joffrey's behavior. The king is still screaming and calling the crowd traitors, threatening to have all of their heads. Completely unaware of the consequences of his actions, countless will die because of his temper and what it caused. Completely furious, Tyrion kicks and slaps Joffrey. So Sir Mandon Moore pulls him off. Lady Tanda Stokeworth is crying because her daughter Lollies is still outside, and so is Preston Greenfield, Aron Santagar, and Sansa Stark. Tyrion's blood goes cold at the thought of any kind of harm coming to the Stark girl, because if she's hurt in any way, Jaime might as well be dead. He orders the Kingsguard to go outside to get the Stark girl back, to which the knight reply that the mob will slay them if they see their white cloaks. Neither Tyrion nor Cersei care about their objections and order them once again to find Sansa. The Hound emerges through the gates holding a shocked but overall unharmed Sansa Stark. Tyrion's relief lasts very shortly though, since smoke is rising in the sky and it threatens to reach the Guildhall of the Alchemist, where the dangerous wildfire is. Tyrion was unspeakably wary, but there was no time for despair. Bronn, take as many men as you need and see that the water wagons are not molested. Gods be good, the wildfire. If any blaze should reach that, we can lose all of Flea Bottom if we must, but on no account must the fire reach the Guildhall of the Alchemist. Is that understood? Clegane, you'll go with him. For half a heartbeat, Tyrion thought he glimpsed fear in the Hound's dark eyes. Fire, he realized. The others take me, of course he hates fire. He tasted it too well. The look was gone in an instant, replaced by Clegane's familiar scowl. I'll go, he said, though not by your command. I need to find that horse. Tyrion turned to the 3 remaining knights of the Kingsguard. Each of you will ride escort to a herald. Command the people to return to their homes. Any man found on the streets after the last peal of the Evenfall bell will be killed. Our place is beside the king, Sir Meryn said, complacent. Cersei reared up like a viper. Your place is where my brother says it is, she spat. The hand speaks with the king's own voice, and disobedience is treason. Boros and Meryn exchanged a look. Should we wear our cloaks, your grace? Sir Boros asked. Go naked for all I care. It might remind the mob that you're men. They are like to have forgotten after seeing the way you behaved out there in the street. Tyrion let his sister rage. His head was throbbing. He thought he could smell smoke, though perhaps it was just the scent of his nerves fraying. He then orders his clanmen to bring him Timett, son of Timett, and at their refusal, being them from rival clans, he asks for Shagga, to whom he orders to keep Shae safe at the Iron Gate and tell her that he might come in the night or the day after. The list of the slain and the injured is way too long for Tyrion's liking, starting from the High Septon, hated for his obesity while the rest of the city is starving. Sir Preston's corpse had been overlooked at first. The Goldcloaks had been searching for a knight in white armor, and he had been stabbed and hacked so cruelly that he was red-brown from head to heel. Sir Aron Santagar had been found in a gutter, his head a red pulp inside a crushed helm. Lady Tanda's daughter had surrendered her maidenhead to 100 shouting men behind a tanner's shop. The Goldcloaks found her wandering naked on Sor Belly Row. Tyrek was still missing, as was the High Septon's crystal crown. 9 Goldcloaks had been slain, 2 score wounded. No one had troubled to count how many of the mob had died. I want Tyrek found, alive or dead, Tyrion said curtly when Bywater was done. He's no more than a boy son to my late uncle Tyget. His father was always kind to me. We'll find him. The Septon's crown as well. The others can bugger each other with the Septon's crown for all I care. Jacelyn Bywater, the captain of the City Watch, then informs Tyrion of the doubtful loyalty of his men. If the city falls at Stannis' hand, they will not be able to count on the City Watch. They all hate the Lannisters, and Tyrion above all. They hate my family, is that what you are telling me? Aye, and will turn on them if the chance comes. Me as well? Ask your eunuch. I'm asking you. Bywater's deep-set eyes met the dwarf's mismatched ones and did not blink. You most of all, my lord. Most of all? The injustice was like to choke him. It was Joffrey who told them to eat their dead. Joffrey who set his dog on them. How can they blame me? His grace is but a boy. In the streets, it is said that he has evil counselors. The queen has never been known as a friend to the commons, nor is Lord Varys called the spider out of love. But it is you they blame most. Your sister and the eunuch were here when times were better under King Robert, but you were not. They say that you filled the city with swaggling sellswords and unwashed savages, brutes who take what they want and follow no laws but their own. They say you exiled Janos Slynt because you found him too bluff and honest for your liking. They say you threw the wise and gentle Pycelle into the dungeons when he dared raise his voice against you. Some even claim that you mean to seize the Iron Throne for your own. Yes, and I'm a monster besides, hideous and misshapen, never forget that. His hand coiled into a fist. I've heard enough. We both have work to attend to. Leave me. He calls for Bronn and Varys. When they both arrive, his mood could not be lower. Bronn lightly comments on the fact that it would be so much easier to reign if Tommen were born first. But Tyrion understands perfectly the subtext of the sellsword's words. The thought of killing Joffrey sends chills down his spine. He tells Bronn that he could have his head for what he just said, but Bronn simply laughs at his empty threat. Friends, said Varys, quarreling will not serve us. I beg you both, take heart. Whose? Asked Tyrion sourly. He could think of several tempting choices. The Kettleblack brothers Cersei is buying, and Tyrion is also paying off, belong to Littlefinger. However, Tyrion is paying them through Bronn, and Bronn is likely a creature of Varys. So when Littlefinger says this about the Kettleblacks, the Leds are far too treacherous to be part of any scheme, and Osmond has become especially unreliable since he joined the Kingsguard. It was probably Varys, through Bronn, who turned the Kettleblack brothers away from Littlefinger, as we found out in A Storm of Swords. However, the Kettleblack dad still works for Littlefinger. A cool idea from this chapter is that maybe Varys or Littlefinger stole Tyrick Lannister as Jaime suspects in A Feast for Crows, and maybe they were also trying to steal away Sansa as well. But the Hound stopped this from happening. The evidence for this is both of them weren't there at the riot, and the woman with the dead baby could have been staged to incite the mob against Joffrey. Anyway, that's it for this video. If you enjoyed watching, please like and subscribe. We'll be covering Lord of the Rings next, hopefully, and then after that, we'll do House of the Dragon or A Clash of Kings Part 4. Once again, thank you to Surfshark VPN for sponsoring this video.